Recording in progress.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Compton.
Aye.
Emerald Baker.
Aye.
Farrell.
Aye.
Happy.
Aye.
Keller.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Mayor Fallon.
Here.
Any additions or amendments to the agenda?
One amendment, Cascade Locks Museum will be changing their report. I mentioned it here, but the original thought was to talk about the collection. More information came to light. Janice is going to do some more research, so she's going to give visitor information.
All right, approval of the adoption of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second the motion.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Compton.
Aye.
Emerald Baker.
Aye.
Farrell.
Aye.
Happy.
Aye.
Keller.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. Okay. Public hearing
No public hearing.
and see action items, appointment to committees.
We do have one person for appointment to committee. Sophie Lemon Harbaugh, relatively new resident of town, 1 year, would like to be appointed to the tourism committee. She does have a degree in tourism.
I've read her application and she sounds like she'd be a really good addition.
Yeah.
How many more slots on tourism do we need to fill?
Pardon me?
How many more slots do we need on to fill on tourism?
Somebody who has a degree in tourism.
Yeah, I love that too.
Not
Yeah.
that
Is this person on Zoom tonight? Would like to speak?
Don't believe so.
I don't see her. Okay. The consensus,
Should we do a vote?
I motion to appoint Sophie Harbaugh to tourism.
I second.
roll call vote.
Councilmember Compton.
Aye.
Emerald Baker.
Aye.
Farrell. Aye. Happy.
Aye.
Keller.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. And it passes. So okay. Yeah, let's see. I wanted to read something here, real quick before we go on to the next one. I just, this year a lot of us are new, and so we're getting the hang of it, how to run a meeting and everything. And I thought I would just go ahead and read this so everyone's on the same page and have a clear understanding. And this is from our Cascade Locks Council Rules and Procedures. It's not too terribly long, so bear with me. It's on decorum and order. 5.4. It says the presiding officer shall preserve order and decorum, prevent attacks on persons or personalities, confines debate to the subject under discussion, and decides all points of order. Council members help the presiding officer preserve decorum during council meetings and are required to follow the direction of the presiding officer and these council rules. It's A. B. The presiding officer or any council member upon motion and majority vote may remove any person who does not follow these rules and causes repeated disruption of the meeting. If a meeting is disrupted, the presiding officer may order the council chambers be cleared and a recess called until order is restored. Alternatively, the presiding officer may call for police assistance if deemed necessary to restore order. And then last C, council members should not use their opportunity to speak to engage personal attack or impugn the motives of any speaker. In the event that a council member is personally offended by any actions or remarks of the mayor or other council members, they should note the action or actual words used and call for a point of personal privilege that challenges the other council member to justify the action or language used. So I thought those were some really good points, and we just kind of need to go over them. Okay, so next, appearance of interested citizens to share a variety of perspectives. Is there anyone signed up to speak? And Ted, you've got two
different topics.
different topics.
They're short.
Oh, come on.
Didn't expect to be up on the list already. All right,
That's okay.
so first of all, let's follow up to last. First of all, thank you for entertaining me on this. And also thank you for your support as it relates to the pedestrian and bicycle.
Can you state your name really quick?
Oh.
For the record?
Yes, Ted Dodd. Ted Dodd, I live here at Cascade Locks. So, I just want to say that I've had a lot of positive comments coming back towards me after the last meeting, say that you were, thought it was good ideas, and very appreciative of what I brought. So, in addition, I was looking at the Windsong development number 2 that's being done, and when I was doing a deep dive study, I was having a hard time seeing that that development was going to have any type of improvements along Forest Lane. Most of the time when a developer has to develop something, they normally have to do some improvements. After doing a further exchange of vehicles, Kathy, I believe, here in the,
Wolseley.
yes.
Yeah.
And I posed a few questions regarding that. I wasn't seeing anything on the plot maps or any other, as I did a deep dive on the thing, I wasn't seeing anything that related to any of the improvements on Forest Lane that were tied to that project. She has since then responded saying that this issue was brought up at the county, Hood River County, and that this development will be conforming to Cascade Locks directive on what we want to do on putting bike lanes in. Because I point I brought up is there's been 3 other recent developments along Forest Lane that's on the Hood River County road that have had sidewalks and bike lanes instituted, and it was mentioned back to me that this property, this project will also be doing the same. Now, however, I have not seen it, but I did want to leave a positive comment back. I really appreciated the engagement in both directions on this topic. So that's more of an update. Any questions for me? Cool.
For the paperwork that you brought to us last time.
What's that, sorry?
So I appreciate that paperwork you brought to us last time.
Yes, happy to do that. Happy to do that.
Okay, great, thank you. Glad you mentioned it. Is there any others?
Is there anybody online with a comment? Please raise your hand.
Okay, I see no others. All right, reports and presentations, city committees,
No city committees.
Mid-Columbia Community Action Council.
Kelly and Kenny, I believe Kenny from the CAC are online. So go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Kelly Horvath. I'm the Director of the Office of Housing Stabilization at Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, and I'm here with our Executive Director for Mid-Columbia Community Action, Kenny, and I'll let him introduce himself while I pull up our slideshow.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kenny LaPointe. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, as Kelly mentioned. We are the community action agency that serves Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. For those of you who don't know about community action, there are community action agencies all over the country and in every county of the state of Oregon. And we just so happen to be the one that serves Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. So our territory extends from Cascade Locks all the way out to Biggs and Rufus and down to the Maupin area. So we have a pretty big territory that we serve in the region. Our agency focuses on household utility assistance programming. We do weatherization, so we weatherize homes that are not currently energy efficient. We provide veteran services, and we also do homeless services. That has obviously been an area that has expanded over the last couple of years. The COVID pandemic has increased the need for homeless services in the region. We operate a shelter in Hood River, so we run the seasonal shelter, pallet shelter site in the Hood River, close to downtown. That has shut down about a month ago for the season. We also run a non-congregate shelter in the Dalles that operates year-round. And we have, the Hood River shelter has 26 beds, and the Dalles shelter has 36 beds. So Kelly, if you want to go to the next slide, I think I kind of went into some of this stuff. And as it says here on that slide, our primary funding comes from the state and federal funding sources, with really the primary coming through the state of Oregon, Oregon Housing and Community Services, the State Housing Finance Agency, and State Homeless Service Agency is really our primary funder. And our mission is to build a better future for our community through partnership and equity-centered programs that prevent and eliminate poverty and houselessness. This is a new mission statement for our agency. We developed this in at the beginning of 2021. We actually developed a whole new strategic plan for our agency, which is available on our website, which I believe there's a link in it later on, but it's mccac.com. Some folks refer to us as MCAC by the acronym, or CAP is what a lot of folks refer to us as well, but Mid-Columbia Community Action Agency. Yeah, there's our vision statement. I'm not going to read all these slides to you. I believe you have access to them, so you can take a look at them. But the strategic plan, the mission, vision, and values of the agency, as I mentioned, were established in 2021 by our board, staff, and community, so community partners. And I'll just say that we are governed by a 9-member board of directors. Being that we serve Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties, we have 3 board members from each county, including 1 elected official from each of those counties. And that is really through our bylaws. We have a person who has lived experience in homelessness or poverty. We have a community member, and then we have this elected official representative who is always a county commissioner. And for Hood River County, it is Commissioner Babbitts. Arthur Babbitts is our board member from Hood River County. The next one, as I mentioned, our core program areas are housing assistance, homeless services, shelter, household utilities. So we help pay energy assistance, gas bills. We even do a firewood program for folks who heat their homes with firewood. There is a big preference for our utilities program on families with children, as well as seniors and people with disabilities. So that's really where those resources are focused. And then I mentioned home weatherization. That program doesn't serve as many people as our utility program. Our utility program served about 3,000 people in 2022. Our home weatherization program served 14 households. So the intervention is a lot bigger in nature. So typically we're doing things like replacing windows, air sealing homes, doing insulation, putting new heat systems in to really create overall household energy efficiency, safety, and health. So the interventions can be, somewhere around $20,000. We can weatherize homes for homeowners. We can do it for landlords who rent to lower income households, or for, on behalf of tenants who are renting homes. I mentioned our shelter programming. We have the shelter in the Dalles, the shelter in Hood River. Our shelters are really currently meant to, and I'll talk more about where we're going with that, but our shelters are currently meant to serve really individuals and couples. They're not meant for families with children. So we do place families with children in need of emergency shelter into hotels and motels through a voucher program. Here is an overview of our housing assistance programs. I've talked about homeless assistance. We also incorporate street outreach. So we're going out and finding folks who are experiencing houselessness, trying to really get them off the street and into either shelter or place them into permanent housing as quickly as possible. So our long-term goal is not to keep people in shelter. It is to get folks into permanent housing, get them the resources they need so they can stabilize and be successful, so kids can do better in school, so folks can do better with their health outcomes, all that type of stuff. And we provide case management around that. Rapid rehousing is really tied into that, and the goal of rapid rehousing, again, is to place folks into permanent housing as quickly as possible. We have some short-term rental assistance that can help do that, and we partner with the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority and Columbia Cascade Housing to try and get folks into longer-term housing situations. Homeless prevention is something that I don't want to miss here, but we do a lot of work to keep people from losing their housing because we don't want them to enter into homelessness. So we're running a program right now that helps provide emergency rent assistance to folks who are behind on their rent, which is something that has happened a lot over the last couple of years with the COVID pandemic, folks not being able to work due to shutdowns. And so we've been able to help folks catch up on their rent to make sure they don't lose their homes. And we provided nearly $1 million of rental assistance in 2022, really utilizing private market landlords who have been our primary houser of folks who are experiencing homelessness. I mentioned emergency hotel vouchers and shelter already, so I'm not going to mention that anymore.
Think you need to practice silence. Can we go upstairs?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
I think we had a rogue mic.
A rogue mic?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead, Kenny.
Okay, you can go on to the next one, Kelly. So I'm going to just talk about a couple of big projects that we have going on in the region right now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to talk about our Houseless Collaborative work. But we call it the Gloria Center. It is a navigation center that we just broke ground on in March of last month. We broke ground on it. It is a multi-agency service center and non-congregate emergency shelter that will be located in the Dalles. We are co-locating the organizations that you see here. So the Oregon Human Development Corporation that serves the Latinx community and farm workers, the Columbia Gorge Health Council, which is our coordinated care organization, joint governing body. Basically, they oversee the administration of Medicaid throughout the region, the Bridges to Health Community Health Worker Program, DHS and their VOC Rehab and Family Self-Sufficiency programs are going to be located there to help determine eligibility of other benefits. Nichiwana Housing that serves the Native community throughout the gorge. So we have a lot of, obviously a lot of Native community members residing throughout the region. A lot of them live on the Native inlu sites and fishing villages. So we're partnering with them to provide services to the Native community. The Mid-Columbia Center for Living, that is our behavioral health provider in the 3-county region. They will also be co-located there. And then One Community Health, our federally qualified health center, will be bringing their mobile medical unit, La Clinica, onto the Navigation Center site on a regular basis. And I think we have a picture of the Navigation Center on the next slide, so you can kind of get a look of what we're talking about. And that is Kelly, if you want to go to the next slide, that is a brand new facility in the Dalles. We actually had 2.6 acres of land donated to us by a community member to build this facility on. As I mentioned, we broke ground last month, March 24th. So this project is well underway. We've got funding from a variety of sources, including the state, the city of the Dalles, Wasco County, Google, Mid-Columbia Center for Living. A lot of folks have put in money into this project. And you can see the shelter portion on the back side. We utilize these, they're like tiny homes, pallet shelters. They're very modest. They don't have a lot inside. They've got a heater and an air conditioner in them and a couple shelves and 2 beds. They're only 64 square feet. We are actually planning on, after this thing gets set up in about 1.5 years, we're going to be moving these shelter units off the site through a collaboration with Columbia Gorge Community College's construction trades program, who will be building tiny homes at the community college and locating them in the place of these pallet shelter units. These pallet shelter units don't have a long lifespan on them, so we're looking longer into the future for use of them. But the construction trades program, as I mentioned, is going to be helping to build these new tiny homes. So there's a job training aspect of it. We definitely need more construction workers in our region here, and so this is going to help do that. The last project that I will mention is the annex, which is tied to our navigation center, but it is, we were selected to participate in a program called Project Turnkey, which was funded by the Oregon legislature. We got into Project Turnkey 2.0 round. And the goal of Project Turnkey is to provide communities with the resources to acquire hotels and motels and convert them into transitional housing, transitional shelter, really as quickly as possible. So in February, we acquired the Oregon Motor Motel, which is now called the Annex in the Dalles. And the Annex has 54 rooms there that will serve the community. It really has two separate wings to it. It will allow us to provide family shelter, which, as I mentioned before, we're utilizing hotel motel vouchers to provide family shelter. So now we will have control of a site that we can provide that family shelter in this project. We're also doing a significant amount of remodeling and renovation on the Oregon Motor Motel right now. For those of you familiar with it, it's like right on the edge of downtown the Dalles. It needs a ton of improvements, capital improvements done to it, putting about 1.5 million in, anything from new siding to new electrical to new air conditioning and heating units, really doing a full-blown renovation on it. And we are partnering with a bunch of agencies to help us operate this site. And we'll have multiple case managers on site on a day-to-day basis, staff on site all the time. There's 2 managers' apartments there, so we will have on-site management 24/7, and then overnight security 365 days a year. And we anticipate opening the annex around June of this year, so long as our renovation continues to move along on schedule. So that's kind of the overview of the projects that we have going. And I would like to kick it over to Kelly to talk about House Bill 4123 and the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative. To give you a little bit of background on this, House Bill 4123 was a bill that passed during the last legislative session, the short session, not the current session. And 4123 established pilot communities across the state of Oregon that would help build really a regionalized homeless service system. We really applied to be part of House Bill 4123. We did so in collaboration with Hood River County, Wasco County, Sherman County, the city of Hood River, and the city of the Dalles. So they all have elected officials who are representative on our advisory committee. We are building, Kelly will talk about the strategic plan, which was funded through House Bill 4123. We were also fortunate enough, before we even entered this pilot, that Providence Health Systems funded us to build a regional strategic plan. So when we got selected to participate in 4123, we already were almost done with our strategic plan. So we're able to use more of the funding to help develop more funding and to provide direct services. And really across the entire region that we serve, that I mentioned. Our Houseless Collaborative, again, Kelly's going to talk about that in a second. The Houseless Collaborative not only includes the cities and counties that I mentioned, but it also includes Klickitat and Skamania counties. We really felt it was important to include the other side of the river because folks receive services throughout the region due to the rural nature. And, they go to get housing where housing is available to them, to receive services where it's available, and go to get jobs where jobs are available. So we felt like it was really important to collaborate with both sides of the river as we develop this plan. So With that, I'm going to kick it over to Kelly to talk more about the Houseless Collaborative and the strategic plan.
Great. Thank you, Kenny. So we thought it would be helpful to both start with Kenny and some just background information on Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, since we are the lead houseless services agency in Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties. We know that there have been some questions in Cascade Locks about the houseless services that are being provided. So wanted to give you all that background. And then as Kenny mentioned, we also wanted to update you on the broader work that we are helping lead in the context of the Regional Houseless Collaborative that we now have a 5-year strategic plan for. So we published this strategic plan last fall after many months of meeting with partners around the region to write that plan, and we'll kind of share the top lines of that plan with you tonight. So I think most of you are probably aware of the complex issue that houselessness is, and the reason that we need more coordinated and solution-oriented efforts to address the issue of houselessness. You know, we've seen rising rates of housing insecurity, continually increasing rents, housing supply is lagging and demand is growing. We're having increased numbers of investors buying up single-family homes, and our community members, our friends, our families, our neighbors are becoming houseless every day. So it's also becoming a complex issue, and even more so than 10 years ago, we have some members of the houseless population who have increasingly complicated behavioral health challenges, not all, but some. And then we also know there's an equity lens to this issue, and that you know, traditionally underserved communities are disproportionately being impacted by houselessness. So Kenny mentioned that we thought it was important to bring together partners, not just from Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman County, which is our service territory, but also to work with our sister organization across the river, and that is Washington Gorge Action Programs, to engage partners from Klickitat and Skamania counties, knowing that in a rural community like this, an issue as complex as houselessness doesn't necessarily recognize borders, and we need to work together to think about how to really wrap our arms around this issue and prevent more families from becoming houseless and help the ones who have. So we worked with about 40 partner organizations from around the region in 2022 to convene the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative. And over the course of about 9 months, we met with these partner organizations, local governments, individuals who have experienced houselessness, service providers, culturally specific organizations, and we came together to found the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative and to also write our strategic plan. And as Kenny mentioned, this process was ultimately also supported by the House Bill 4123 funding that our agency and our 5 partners within that MOU, including Hood River County, got to help really strengthen this regional approach to improving our work to end houselessness. So the vision of the Houseless Collaborative that we helped found with these 40 other organizations is here, and I will not, again, read it all to you, but we do envision, I think, the same thing that most of our local governments envision, which is a strong and thriving community and equitable opportunities for folks and stable housing for folks. And then the mission of the Houseless Collaborative is to work together to live out that vision. So we really care about, you know, addressing the issue of houselessness head on, and obviously supporting folks who are experiencing that issue, but also expanding housing capacity, looking at the region's housing stock, looking at these bigger forces that have been affecting the housing market, the rental market, and our communities who are falling into houselessness. And then these are the values that really drive the work of the Houseless Collaborative, and that all 40 member organizations of that collaborative have decided are important as kind of a North Star for pushing forward on this work together. I'll also just highlight that the collaborative, when we were developing our vision, mission, and values, did decide to publish an equity statement, knowing that the issue of houselessness does disproportionately impact traditionally underserved communities, such as communities of color. And we know that we need to, look to the data, work to improve traditionally unfair housing systems, and really drive decisions and focus resources to ensure that we're putting a good equity lens on the work that we're doing as a collaborative. We also agreed that we want to include the voices and experiences of people who are or have been houseless, with a focus on BIPOC communities. So the strategic plan that the Houseless Collaborative finalized and is in the process now of working to implement includes 4 key goal areas: shelter, services, housing, and advocacy. And the strategic plan itself, you can easily find on our website, midcolumbiahouselesscollaborative.org. But we are going to just kind of give you the top lines today of each of those 4 key goal areas. So the first goal area is shelter. And I think that when a lot of people think about houseless services, shelter is what they envision. We know, and the collaborative knows, that shelter is only one piece of the puzzle. And I like to think about it as the access point to stabilization longer term, right? So when someone falls into houselessness, first comes first, like you got to make sure you get a roof over your head before you can figure out any of your next steps, right? So we really care as a collaborative and have articulated goals in our strategic plan about building better systems to coordinate shelter placements and services that help end houselessness, knowing that shelter really is just the first piece of the puzzle, and that programs that accompany shelter, like rapid rehousing assistance that, give people some extra support to get on their feet financially as they get back into permanent housing and back to a place where they're not going to fall into houselessness again. Those are really important and a key part of the shelter system. We also know that as a collaborative, we need to work to ensure our region has enough funding to not only provide shelter, but to take care of shelter staff, compensate them at fair levels, given that they have hard jobs, and then ultimately, again, provide those supports for our shelter guests to help them find housing quickly. The services goal area of our strategic plan has many individual action steps within it, but they all kind of tie back to the themes of improving access to resources that houseless populations need, including by asking houseless folks what would be helpful and valuing their culture, knowing that that looks different depending on the community. Someone who's houseless and living in a rundown condition at an in-lieu site who identifies as Native American may have a very different set of needs and priorities when it comes to longer-term housing stability than someone who lives in the Dalles and is a family with children and identifies as Latino. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about the whole span of resources and engaging with communities depending on what their needs are to improve access to those resources, since we know housing does not live in a bubble, and multiple different types of resources can lead to longer term housing stabilization, even if they're resources that are kind of outside of the housing realm. The collaborative also agreed in our strategic plan that in addition to improving access to existing resources and working with communities to do that, that we need to enhance services throughout our region that help people. Some of the key services that need enhancing are those in the behavioral health care realm, services for folks who have recently left jail or prison, housing that makes it easier to recover after a health event. We have a major shortage in our area of medical respite care, for instance. So we have folks who are houseless or unstably housed who get discharged from the hospital. Often they are recovering from a surgery or a major illness. And oftentimes our agency is who gets the call. And sometimes we may only be able to help them with a couple nights of a hotel voucher, depending on what kind of capacity we have at the shelter at that time. We also agreed within the service area of the strategic plan that we want to work together to take action steps to make it simpler for service providers to coordinate care. So there's some good work that's happening with our coordinated care organization, Pacific Source, and our healthcare partners, for instance, to develop better referral platforms so we can more easily kind of refer and keep track of clients who are in need of different types of services or healthcare between multiple organizations. And we know that we also can just avoid rebuilding the wheel and help someone connect to the services they need as quickly as possible if we have a simpler path forward on coordinating that care. And then housing is another really huge goal area within the strategic plan. I mentioned that the housing market has obviously seen a lot of changes, even in the last 5 years, 10 years. And we know that we need more affordable housing if we're going to move the needle in a meaningful way on the issue of houselessness. So the collaborative actually set a goal within our strategic plan to make it easier to build housing that low-income households can afford, and to construct at least 262 affordable, accessible housing units in the 5-county Mid-Columbia region by 2027. That goal is not just a random goal. I know 262 is kind of a out there number, but that number is actually informed by the number of units that would be made a reality if several key housing projects that are in the pipeline across the Mid-Columbia region got across the finish line within the next 5 years. We know that's not a done deal in all cases, but the collaborative has made it a priority to support those projects, including several in Hood River County. And those specific projects are all listed in our strategic plan if you go to our website, and I'll be happy to make sure that I share that. I believe that link has been shared with the city manager already, but I can bump it up as well. The collaborative also agreed that within the housing goal area of our strategic plan, it's not just a matter of constructing new housing, but we need to preserve existing affordable housing, because every day the affordable housing stock is being impacted when, an investor or even just a wealthier family purchases up a home. If someplace that's traditionally been affordable, rents rise or a subsidy expires, you have a whole slew of families potentially that used to be able to afford their rent yesterday and can't today. So we're working together as a collaborative to preserve the region's existing supply of affordable housing through multiple strategies as well. And those are key goal areas and actions outlined in our strategic plan. Working in the context of housing development to also ensure that people of color and other underserved populations who historically have faced more barriers to housing can access that housing as we build more housing and as we work to preserve it is a key piece of the puzzle as well, and in line with our equity values. And then pivoting into the kind of the final piece of our plan, which I'll talk about in a second, around advocacy. The collaborative did agree that one of our goals needs to be helping leaders and the public understand the need for more affordable and accessible housing, because there are, lots of causes for houselessness. And one of the key factors behind this is that the rent is just getting too high. Families are getting pushed out of their homes, and we have more and more of our community members who are experiencing houselessness, given the challenges that the economy is posing right now, inflation. We have seniors who are on fixed incomes, and we really have a great need for affordable housing to help all of our communities thrive and do as well as possible, even if they are in a lower income circumstance. So the final area that the collaborative agreed we wanted to focus on within this 5-year strategic plan is advocacy. So the collaborative has multiple kind of action items focused on helping explain the need for our work and to build community support. We recently, a couple months ago, put out a report that actually talks about the housing stock in our area, shares personal stories of members of our community who have become houseless and who have been helped by the programs that we offer and that we want to get longer term support for and funding for. And that's a good example of the work that we're trying to do to better educate folks about the importance of this issue and how we can work together to solve this issue. The collaborative has also agreed that we want to use data to challenge myths about houselessness and teach people about the impact that our region's housing shortage has had on all of us. I think that Cascade Locks is a great example of a place where tourism is a really key component of the economy. And if we have, restaurants and businesses downtown that are relying on workers to be able to get to work and go every day and serve customers, if those workers can't live in their community because they can't afford to find housing there, that's not a problem just for the workers. It's a problem for the employer. It's a problem for our entire community and our entire tax base. So we really are working to put the pieces together a little more clearly to make sure that we're all talking about how this issue affects us and thinking about how we can work together to address it as a result. And then we also are working as a collaborative to advocate for funding and policies that can help us make real progress on these issues. So even right now, this week, we've got members of our 4123 advisory board from those 5 jurisdictions that Kenny mentioned that are participating in that work, sending a letter to the governor's office to help us close the final funding gap on our navigation center project. We have, folks who have been meeting with legislators during legislative session to support various pieces of legislation that, live up to the goals outlined within our strategic plan. And even at the local level, we're working to engage folks and make sure that we're advocating and educating folks about how we can all have a meaningful impact on the issue of houselessness. So the goal of our strategic plan is to get things done. And so I'll also just flag here that we are, committed to implementation, and we didn't write a 20-page strategic plan just to have it sit on a shelf and collect dust. So we've already accomplished several goals within that strategic plan. We have major goals within that strategic plan underway, including the ones that Kenny highlighted earlier, some key projects like the Project Turnkey project, which is going to be opening as the annex in the Dalles in the next couple months. The Navigation Center is an example of that. And so we are committed to engaging work groups of folks as well as local task forces and working with partners to regularly update the plan, check progress on how we're doing with accomplishing the goals in that plan, and then on an annual basis, having community listening sessions to make additional edits and updates so that it's a living, responsive document that we also hold ourselves accountable to so that we continue to make progress on the issue of houselessness. So with that, we'll kind of stop our presentation piece of this, and we are happy to take questions about the work of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council and or the Mid-Columbia Houseless Collaborative. I also did want to flag that I believe Jamie Hepner is here from Hood River County Parole and Probation. And I think that there have been some questions recently about, some of the programs that are being offered in Hood River County. And it sounds like she's gotten some similar questions too. So she offered to be here to help address any questions if there are any in relation to populations of folks who have recently been incarcerated.
Questions? Council?
Oh, I have a couple of questions. Why didn't MCAC notify the city or council of these placements before they were done?
Can you clarify which placements you're referring to?
I'm talking about placements in Bridge of the Gods Motel.
So I'd be happy to answer that question. Thank you for the question. So these are folks who are making housing choices on where they're going to go, and we have a confidentiality obligation to our clients and are not going to notify folks that people are choosing to be housed in a certain community because it's in violation of their confidentiality rights. So we're not going to do that.
I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I think I won't speak for everybody, but we want to be compassionate, and we're a small town without many resources for houselessness or in fact the service part that you attach to the shelter we don't have. So I don't know how you're providing the services to the people that are housed here, and if we're getting them buses to Hood River County, or how they're getting there to get services they need. And of course, I know as a counselor, I can only speak for myself, I want more services here, but the our community development code 8-6.70.020 for the downtown zone indicates that residences like apartments or mixed use should be above or below street level because our code is for, the economic development and a thriving downtown businesses, so that I'm attaching to Councilmember Miller's question, that I felt that with a change of ownership of that motel and a change of code for service that is whereupon possibly the city might have been contacted to recognize what codes we have.
Sure, I appreciate that. We don't own the hotel, so the hotel owner is acting as a private party landlord. So I think that question should probably be directed to the hotel owner. So he's going to be the hotel owner, or any private market landlord is going to be under their own obligations to comply with code within the city. So we don't get involved in code unless it's our own properties that we are owning and operating. That's when we're involved in going through the permitting process and making sure that we're in compliance with building codes and all that type of stuff. So in this particular situation, that is not the case. So the tenants of the property selected to live in a certain place that was affordable to them, and the owner agreed to rent to them. So they sought out their own housing and identified that property. I would suggest talking to the owner of Bridge of the Gods about that choice. It sounds like you may have some questions for him.
Thank you. And then on the services, you offer some great things like the utilities, help, and, possible future construction of some affordable housing or workforce housing. How do our citizens access the information on utilities help or winterizing?
Yeah, so the best way, if folks have access to the internet, is to go to mccac.com. So Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. We didn't get the .org, we just got the .com. So mccac.com. There is applications available on our website, as well as contact information for our offices. And we do have an office in Hood River. We have outreach staff. We do outreach in Cascade Locks on a regular basis. So our household utilities team will set up in Cascade Locks on outreach days, and folks can come apply for programs on those outreach days if they need utility assistance. Typically, the weatherization program is accessed through the utility assistance program. So a lot of times we notice that somebody comes back to us multiple times for utility assistance and their bills are extraordinarily high. And we say, hey, we may want to do an energy audit on your home and see if there's something going on there that is causing your home to be less efficient. And that is often, there's leaking through a hole in the wall, or lack of insulation. And so we can do those improvements after we're able to assess that through an energy audit. But I would definitely have them go through the website. There's a phone number again to access. Access is in the office. We realize that not everybody, many seniors don't have access to technology. So we do have the ability to get folks paper applications. And then we do have folks who speak Spanish as well in our office who can help if folks are Spanish speakers.
Thank you. And the days that you come to Cascade Locks, do you have one of those calendared in yet?
I know that we're just about to be opening our cooling season right now. Our winter season is up for utility assistance. So I'd have to check with our household utilities manager, and we can make sure that you all get information on when those outreach days are, but they're not yet scheduled for the summertime.
Thank you.
And that is something new for us to be doing cooling work. We just actually started that about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when we had, I think we were at 122 degrees in the Dalles, and we had a lot of folks who didn't have access to air conditioning. We did cooling centers, and then we started providing utility assistance for, for people who were having to use their air conditioners in their home because their bills were getting really high during those very hot days.
I have one more question. I'll let somebody else. if we, as a city, and we have a dual government entity here, the Port of Cascade Locks, looked at helping develop some affordable housing, can your agency help us find funds from the state or feds or to do such a
Yeah,
thing?
we would, yes, we would be happy to work with you on doing that. The agency I mentioned that is our primary funder, Oregon Housing and Community Services, is the primary funder of affordable housing in the state of Oregon. That's really outside of like the Portland metro area or Lane County. So we go to them and compete for funds. We're not necessarily the lead on affordable housing development. We partner with the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority and Columbia Cascade Housing. And I think they're actually working on the preservation of a rural development project right now in Cascade Locks, Columbia View. That's a project that they're working on, and anything that we would be looking at doing would be in partnership with them. But we can definitely help, definitely help.
Yeah, I think, Councilman Miller, did you have additional questions?
Oh, yeah, I have a
Sorry.
few more.
I'll hit you.
The Oregon Motel in the Dalles, from what I understand, once that's completed, you're gonna have 24-hour security there. Is that true?
That is true.
How come we didn't get any security here?
Again, we don't own the Bridge of the Gods Hotel. That was a choice that clients made to get housing in that particular property, and the landlord is somebody that you would want to talk to about that because he is in ownership, or they are in ownership of that particular property.
Okay, also.
We are in ownership of the Oregon Motor Motel, and we get to dictate the services and how we are managing that property.
I appreciate that answer. Also, your clients here, by your rules, they have to have a kitchen. And I would assume they're getting EBT benefits. For stationing here in Cascade Locks, their grocery dollars are not going to stretch very far. The market here is very expensive. So that always brings a question of why you would bring them here.
So I mean, I can let Kelly talk more about some of the service side of things, but I will reiterate that this is housing choice. So people have the choice. We're not forcing people to go to any one location. So they get to choose where they live, where they decide to live. That is a right of community members to choose their housing. I think what you're highlighting, though, is kind of what Kelly talked about earlier during the Houseless Collaborative presentation, in that, we live in a rural region and housing costs have risen a lot. And that has definitely put some pressures on people who have been forced to live in communities outside of where they're able to work or shop or whatever it might be. And that is definitely a strain. And transportation is also an issue. I can tell you that we have the same issues with our own workforce. I mean, we have folks who work in our office in the Dalles that live in Goldendale because housing prices have gotten so high there. So it's definitely a challenge for folks. But again, we don't choose where people live. It's housing choice.
Okay, and once the winter season ends and the contract, I guess, ends, do you come pick the people up and supply them with a different housing, or you just let them go?
So I'll let Kelly talk about sort of the plans to get folks transition into more permanent situations, but we aren't like a busing or shipping organization that is moving people throughout the region. It is housing choice that people have, and we work with them to try and stabilize them throughout their time in whatever housing it is. If they're in our shelter system, we work to get them placed into permanent housing by providing them with case management and pointing them to housing resources. But that is housing choice, again, at the end of the day. And there's also personal choice involved in there for folks. But I know that we have folks who have been living in Cascade Locks that are working to get into permanent housing situations. And I believe they've already had some successful placements of folks in Cascade Locks. And I'll let Kelly kind of talk some more about that.
Yeah, I want to speak to that. I think there's a lot of value in, from our caseworkers' perspective and experience on the ground in working with houseless folks who have a stable place to stay, even over the course of just a couple of months. And in the case of the folks who have been placed at Bridge of the Gods through the partnership with the landlord and owner there, we've had multiple folks who, came in and were living there for just a couple of months. And through the stable work of our caseworkers, going and visiting them at least once a week, helping them navigate resources, helping them think through, family connections, other options, employment opportunities, et cetera. We've had multiple transitions already where folks who were staying for a while at Bridge of the Gods transitioned into a different new permanent housing scenario. And I think we have a couple more folks who are there for the rest of this winter season, just even for the next couple of weeks, and who are well on their way to transitioning into permanent housing after they exit their placements at Bridge of the Gods. So our goal is to prevent and end houselessness. That's our agency's mission. And we have really found that our caseworkers are able to do a lot more positive work when it comes to helping people get on the long-term path to housing stabilization, if they even just have a roof over their head for a couple of months. So we are really doing our best to make sure that people are getting set up and stabilized for the long term. And I'll also just note that for several of the clients that I've talked to our caseworkers about who have been staying at Bridge of the Gods over the last couple of months, that experience and being able to, whether they had an eviction on their record previously, for instance, which is happening more and more to families, if they have one medical expense that puts them behind on their rent, having a few months of a new relationship with a new landlord and a new rental reference has made the difference in helping them get into housing and stabilize longer term after their stay at Bridge of the Gods. So that's the kind of success story that we work towards and are having every day.
I appreciate all that. But one last one is that you have some good success stories, but there's been a few that have been here that have caused disturbances. Had reports of assault, we've had reports of extra drug use in the area that they're in. I personally witnessed a disturbance in a business by one. So is the motel responsible for those people?
Can you provide any more specific information? Are you referring to particular incidents?
Yeah, there was one guy who was, I know, constantly causing fights and getting physical confrontations with people. There was another one who had mental health issues, who caused disturbances in businesses. So, and then we have noticed an increase in drug activity. So, is that going to be the landlord's responsibility or yours, since you're the ones that placed them there?
I think it'd be helpful to understand if you're referring to any confirmed circumstances where there were clients of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council who had any issues. I'd also be happy to let Jamie speak to kind of her perspective from the law enforcement side of things about, the placements at Bridge of the Gods and enhanced law enforcement activity that our understanding is there's been concern about in the community. So I'll pause and let her speak to that a little bit, and then I'm happy to talk more if there's specific scenarios or individuals that you're referring to.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jamie Hepner with the Hood River County Sheriff's Office Parole and Probation Division. I have been working in partnership with Kelly and Kenny and McCack, and am really excited for the opportunity. I had a chance to pull calls for service to the address of 630 Southwest Wanapa, going back to September when the rapid rehousing project started at Bridge of the Gods. And what I'm seeing is there hasn't been an increase of calls for service to the sheriff's office regarding addresses at that location. There have been some vehicle stops. I know that there has been one person that is on parole and probation with our office that was residing there. He and his family have since been relocated, actually sustained long-term housing and employment in the Portland area. And so there are no clients that are on supervision in Hood River County that are actually living there at this point. And so if there is additional information, passing that on to the sheriff's office, because at this point, we don't have record of that. And the sheriff and undersheriff are both in the room. And if there is that activity going on, definitely passing that on would be helpful. We just are not seeing it in the calls for service.
And I will also just say thank you so much, Jamie, for that context that, Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, we set a high bar, and we believe very much that we can help clients, but they have to meet us halfway, and they have to do their part of the work as well. And that includes living up to high standards when it comes to behavior. So for instance, in our shelter in the Dalles and the one that we've operated in Hood River County, we have, behavior rules. If people are creating barriers or disturbances and they can't follow those rules, they can no longer participate in our programs. And the same will be true as we open up the annex here in the Dalles in the next couple of months. We'll have those, and we also are, putting good neighbor agreements in place. In the event that there are issues with, hotel voucher placements that we make or other issues, my experience has been that our caseworkers have been, responsive, speedy, and have done, their due diligence to make sure that, they're not there just blindly supporting a client if a client is making a mistake and isn't living up to the standards that we care about upholding as an agency. So my understanding, given some of the concerns and questions that have come up in Cascade locks in recent weeks, I've talked to our caseworkers, and my understanding is that I think there has been one client who ended up being evicted, and it did not work out to have them placed there. And my understanding is that our caseworkers fully cooperated and supported the owner in helping make that transition out happen. So I just want you to know that we care about being good partners in the community, and we also care about ensuring that part of the service we provide to clients is helping them be successful longer term. And we know that means, being good neighbors, adhering to good behavior standards, and ultimately partnering with the community around them in a positive way.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that? How would we know whether an individual is being provided services under MECAC or just an ordinary citizen that is struggling with houselessness?
Based on our confidentiality requirements, you would have to ask that individual themselves. We do have release of information that clients will sign if they are comfortable with us coordinating with a particular partner agency to support them with services, but we do respect their privacy and can't share that information unless they've given us a release to do so with a particular individual or agency.
I would say if you think you have a concern, if you think that it is a client, you can always contact us and, say that you believe something occurred with a client of ours, and then we can look into it further. So if there are police reports or anything along those lines that can validate or give a name, then that would be even more helpful. But if it's just, I saw this person walking down the street doing this, but there's no report or anything from the sheriff's department, then it would be really tough for us to follow up on, just as much as it would be tough for anyone to say it is a client of ours.
Do you have all your questions?
Yes, I appreciate all their answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, hi there, Pete Happy, just a couple of questions for you. So how does a property owner become a rapid rehousing partner with your organization?
That's a great question. So the rapid rehousing program that we operate is a package of different types of assistance to help houseless clients get back on their feet and into permanent housing after they've fallen into houselessness. So we have some partner landlords who have come to us after they've heard about the rapid rehousing program, and they've said, hey, I have some open units available and I'm really interested in partnering with you and being a part of your rapid rehousing program. And we have some rapid rehousing landlords who've partnered with us who end up doing so because a client that we've enrolled in rapid rehousing who has a letter in hand saying, I can, offer this lease signing bonus and 6 months of rent assistance, et cetera. They go to various landlords or fill out applications. And then if they get approved and the landlord ends up placing them, then we'll help provide that financial assistance. So it really can go in multiple directions depending on the client and the landlord.
Got it. So just, I want to make sure I understand that correctly. So it could be one of your clients reaching out to a landlord, and that's how they would get added as into the program. Or the landlord could say, I have empty units and we'd like to see if we can place individuals. I imagine in both of those circumstances, there's going to be a vetting process to make sure that the property conforms to certain requirements like the kitchen. Can you talk a little bit more about that vetting process for those properties?
Yeah, we do have a set of standards that we are required to meet for those properties. And there's kind of two things our caseworkers consider. One is just basic habitability standards. So our caseworkers, if a client finds a unit that they can rent using support from our rapid rehousing program, we'll generally help conduct a safety inspection and make sure that it lives up to those standards. And then there are requirements in terms of the structure itself. So we cannot use the rapid rehousing program in units that don't have a full kitchen because that's not considered a rental unit for the purposes of the rapid rehousing program. We can, however, use a hotel voucher to pay for a shorter term stay, for instance, in a hotel that doesn't have a full kitchen, though we've largely wound down our hotel voucher work, at least for this season as of now. And then the other thing that we typically kind of inspect for or look for when we're helping folks with housing placements, if they're enrolled in our rapid rehousing program, is if the unit they're looking to rent lives up to the standards required by the housing authority for use of a housing voucher longer term, since we a lot of times do have clients who are either in line to get a housing voucher or have one that they'll be able to apply shortly after we help with some of the move-in costs from our rapid rehousing program. So we do follow through on kind of the inspection side when it comes to habitability, the basic structure and offerings when it comes to a full kitchen and being, qualified as a rental unit, and then any other requirements, especially rent rate and utilities rate that fit into the housing authority requirements for a voucher if the client has a voucher in hand or is on the list for one.
So it sounds like there's a couple of different programs in rapid rehousing. You have housing vouchers and hotel vouchers. Is that the only two, or is that it?
So we do not administer the housing voucher program. The Federal Housing Department, HUD, they provide resources to Mid-Columbia Housing Authority, and that is the administrator locally of Section 8 and other housing vouchers. Our agency, we provide short-term hotel vouchers to clients who are in need of emergency lodging or shelter when we don't have shelter beds available otherwise. And then the other big program that we run for houseless clients is our rapid rehousing program, which provides some of those move-in supports as well as temporary rent assistance.
And sounds like there isn't a requirement for a kitchen for the hotel vouchers, but the Bridge of the Gods is only, it says in here that they're eligible because they have kitchens. So I'm confused on that point.
They are eligible for the rapid rehousing program because they have kitchens. But that is a fairly rare scenario. And we wouldn't normally be able to use the rapid rehousing program in a hotel because most hotels, each unit doesn't have its own full kitchen.
And I think some of the confusion on our part, you know, I don't want to speak to anybody else, is just this, but I guess for me, hotels are more transient for short-term housing, but are there people that are now staying at the Bridge of the Gods Motel for longer than 30 days in more of a long-term housing situation using your program?
We have had some folks who have stayed for a longer term situation with the support of our rapid rehousing program. And then typically though, our hotel voucher program only supports short-term stays for a few days or maximum a few weeks for someone who needs emergency shelter.
So I guess under what circumstances would somebody be at the Bridge of the Gods for more than 30 days then?
But you're asking under what circumstances would someone be there for longer?
Correct.
Yeah, so the owner of Bridge of the Gods was interested in partnering with us on our rapid rehousing program and basically said, you know, winter season is a slow time and I'm going to have open units and I've got full kitchens. So if we want to come up with rental agreements and lease agreements for clients of yours to, you know, have an option for housing if they're interested for longer, like a few months, then that's an option. So we've had a few clients who have been interested in that and have been able to stay and kind of get their feet under them by staying at the Bridge of the Gods over the winter with more of a formal kind of rental agreement style agreement versus a short-term hotel voucher.
And I guess my last question is there ever, is there a verification or a step in your process to confirm that the properties or landlords that are looking to be a part of this program are not violating any city codes, laws, or, you know, their business license? You know, if they have a business that's licensed to do short-term rentals, but they're doing longer-term leases, potentially they might not be operating underneath their business license or outside of the code for where their business is operating.
That is not one of the requirements of our program for screening when we provide rapid rehousing assistance to someone.
So potentially you could end up placing somebody in a property that would then have to be moved out of that property because you haven't verified that that property would actually meet the city's requirements. Is that true?
I suppose that could happen. Yeah.
Do you see that as potentially contrary to your mission of providing stability by not just checking that box before you move forward with approving a property for placing houseless people?
That's a good question. And I would be happy at some point to set a follow-up time to walk you through our program enrollment packet. I think the reality of the current program requirements is that it's a pretty burdensome program as it is. And I would say that the huge majority of the landlords and partners that we've worked with thus far on the rapid rehousing program, I would say have not encountered the kinds of questions that do seem to be arising in this particular circumstance. So it's definitely a good flag and a good question for us to consider moving forward. But ultimately something that we would encourage you to talk more with the owner about as well. So if there's additional questions, we'd be happy to sit down and talk you through kind of our vetting process though. And I can show you the program enrollment packet and steps that we take there.
It just feels like it's something that slipped through the cracks, and the city is not involved with this process at all. And I'm not just talking about our city, but any of the cities that are involved in this program. And I guess it puts some additional responsibility on the cities to, you know, make sure that these programs are conforming with their code requirements, and I guess it's a bit of a burden, and I feel like really that burden should lie on the landlord that's actually getting, that's, I guess, wanting to have the property approved for the program, not on the city.
I would say that if in this particular case, that the Bridge of the Gods owner of that property is in non-compliance with city codes, I mean, that is definitely something that we would want to know about, so folks are not being rehoused or housed in a property that they potentially have to be relocated out of. So if that is the case, we would definitely take that information and make sure we have that available to us. But we make a lot of placements every year, and the individual landlords are responsible for their own compliance with city codes and tenant landlord law and all of that type of stuff. And but if that is the case with this particular situation, we can definitely look into that, and we won't continue to house people in a place that is not supposed to be being utilized for that particular purpose.
I guess it'd be nice though that there's a step in your vetting process to confirm that before you place people. I think is what, I guess my point is that I'm trying to bring up, as opposed to waiting until after the fact that you have a complaint.
That is not a step in the process, and these are state and federal programs that have compliance requirements behind them, and that is not a compliance requirement in any of program manuals for state or federal programs around this. So, but again, we would definitely take that information. We don't create the program guidelines. These are passed down to us from the state and Department of Housing and Urban Development, but we would definitely not want to, again, house people where they would potentially have to be relocated.
I would also.
Sorry, I was hoping you could repeat that. So you said you don't draft the program guidelines, you just are executing them. Who drafts those program guidelines?
Oregon Housing and Community Services and the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Oregon Housing and Community Services, is that what that was?
Yeah. It's a state agency.
And then the second agency was?
The Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD.
Got it. Thank you.
And I just had a question on your your thought there. It's one of mine. So you had mentioned that the individuals, they often will find a community or a hotel or whatever, and then you guys partner with them. But do you ever approach the landlords? Are you assisting in that? Coming up with a list that you have reached out to? And giving that list as an option? Or is it solely up to the individual who's moved in?
I believe that our casework team does have a list of local property management companies that they have assembled that they sometimes hand out to clients. And I believe the Housing Authority does the same thing. So often clients will come to us and say, what's an affordable option? And we have kind of a standard list that lists local property management companies that tend to manage more affordable properties. That's the main list that I'm aware of that we hand out. When it comes to if we proactively are recruiting landlords, like I said, it's kind of a balance. We sometimes have landlords who come to us because they've heard of our programs, word of mouth. In the case of our houselessness prevention programs, that's where clients come to us and say, my rent is overdue and my landlord needs their money. So we help enroll them, and then the landlord meets us that way. We've actually had then landlords who got to know us through our houselessness prevention program, who then ask about our rapid rehousing program because they've appreciated being able to partner with us to keep people housed, and then want to let us know when they've got open units. And then our housing caseworkers sometimes are asked by our clients to help look for housing. So we'll sit down and look through Craigslist postings and other things and help them through the process of actually looking for housing in the region. But for the most part, the way that our rapid rehousing program works is that once a client is enrolled, they communicate to a landlord about the fact that they're enrolled in that program and have some offerings that come with that program, like a lease signing bonus, security deposit assistance, rent assistance, because we give them a letter stating how the program works, and then they give that letter to the landlord when they are looking for a place to stay.
It seems like it would be helpful, to Councilman Pete, what he said about, it would be helpful to know if the person that's using the letter to the, let's say the motel, if it was in compliance with city code. So otherwise they're getting rent and it's not in compliance with city code.
I think I'll just say that I think that's a good point. And like Kenny said, I think we're happy to discuss that further with you all and look into that. And we certainly don't want to be causing issues. I would also say that this conversation is the exact kind of conversation that we are having with members of the Houseless Collaborative, and we would welcome any of you who are interested in thinking about the mechanics of this work to join the work of the Houseless Collaborative or get involved in kind of the work of the Hood River County Task Force. We want to work with our local partners on the ground, including local governments, to think through what is the best way that we can move the needle on houselessness and how can we do that collaboratively and in a way that works for everyone. So we certainly have other kind of local policy questions that we're starting to chew on, and would love to continue that conversation with you all in the context of our Houseless Collaborative work.
Right. I think it's really important to develop good relationships. And then also at the same time, when someone, if they're going into a motel, let's say for 30 days, they go in, they find out it's going to be against code. If it's longer than that, then they're impacted. So it's not only the owner of the motel, but the city, and then it's the individual, because they're having to move when they didn't think they had to move. So that puts added stress on your client. Tammy, did you have a question?
I just had a real simple question. So Hood River County, I noticed on your slide thing is only for winter placement. And since it's April 10th, I was wondering if you could clarify what winter season is with your program.
Are you asking about the rapid rehousing program or the winter shelter that we run in Hood River County?
I guess both of them.
Okay, so the Hood River County Shelter it previously has been run by Hood River Shelter Services, and we ran that shelter in coordination with them, and we handled the operations side this season. So we opened on November 8th, and this season we closed that shelter on March 20th. My understanding of the Bridge of the Gods rapid rehousing program is that I think we have maybe just a couple of clients who I think April is their final month that they'll be staying on site there, since the agreement was that the hotel owner, wanted to work with the rapid rehousing program kind of during the slower season over the winter and early spring.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay. In interest of time, I think.
I had one quick question.
Go ahead, Sean.
But I'm Sean Crompton. I was curious on seeing the list of all the towns and organizations on the Houseless Collaborative. If Cascade was ever approached to join, or was it just assumed because it was part of Hood River County?
That's a good question. I could double check and look at our list of initial invitations, but I believe so. Kenny, I think that you were more involved in the initial creation of the collaborative than I was. So do you want to address that?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and take a look. We really, when we went in for House Bill 4123 and developed the collaborative there, we leaned on our Hood River County Commissioner, Arthur Babbitts, who actually helped us to put in the application for House Bill 4123. So I would be happy to, we would be happy to fold Cascade Locks into the collaborative work that is going on. But Hood River County, Wasco County, Sherman County, we obviously have a lot of cities in that 3-county area, and the city of the Dalles and the city of Hood River proactively stepped up and asked to be a part of that. But that was also through county commissioners that were involved in that on the front end.
Thank you. I think part of our struggle we were having too is that this kind of was, we kind of found out about this surprisingly. It was not something the city was aware of happening. And I think just in the future, we would like to be part of it. And so we know what's going on. More so than being surprised. But thank you very much.
Okay, any other? Okay, any other comments? Are you all done with your presentation?
Yes, that's it for us. Thanks for having us. And I know that contact information, you all have, I didn't think Jordan asked Kelly's contact info, so we're happy to follow up with additional questions that folks may have. And I am curious to hear more about some of the concerns that have been risen here about potentially specific clients, as well as code violations that sound like, I mean, I'm guessing there are code violations that are taking place. And I would like to hear more about that and some specifics on those code violations, because they've been alluded to, but we've never been notified about anything related to code violations. So we would like to hear more about that. Not tonight, but in writing to us.
Not tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
But thank you,
All right,
thank you
well,
for having us.
Great, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, next, Sheriff Matt English. River County Sheriff's Office. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the council, thanks for having me tonight. So I usually have the opportunity to come down and talk to the council and understand that maybe there are some questions, and happy to talk about whatever's going on with the River County Sheriff's Office, any questions that you may have. And as I said, I always appreciate the opportunity and the time that I have with council, and a lot of new faces now, but it's great to get in front of you.
We're all looking at Pete.
Sure, I did send you a handful of questions.
Yeah, I can start with those.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay. Yeah, so there was a question about drug houses, manufacturing, et cetera, and what can be done. You know, having an assumption or even direct knowledge that perhaps there's drug activity in a house, we have to follow the law. People have constitutional rights. They have the right to be protected from unlawful search and seizure. And in order to go into a residence, to take down a residence, we have to have probable cause, we have to write search warrants, but in order to get there, we have to have very clear evidence to do that. And I can tell you, you know, we have absolutely taken down drug dealers, drug houses within the community of Cascade Locks, and within recent years, there was a very visible downtown SWAT call out that we had just a few years back that was drug related. So it's really important that if people have actionable information, that they pass that on to us, so we can start an investigation. It takes cooperation from the community in order to do that. A hunch isn't enough. But if there's information that, okay, there's a lot of cars coming in and out that are making short stops and things like that, we can talk with people that are making that report on how they can help. And then there's things that we can do as well in order to take action. I can tell you in recent months, all of the agencies in the Gorge, law enforcement agencies in the Gorge have gotten together and started a fentanyl response team because of the fentanyl epidemic. And so we have detectives assigned from Sherman County, Wasco County, the Dallas Police, Hood River Police, Hood River County Sheriff's Office, and on the other side of the river as well to combat the fentanyl epidemic in our area. And they are active and they are working and they are making cases today. So there are things that are happening. Some of them are not going to be very visible, but there's absolutely work being done because it's absolutely impacting our communities. Wasco County has seen, they've tracked over 20 deaths related to fentanyl just in the last year or so. And there's been deaths in Hood River County as well because of how dangerous that drug is. And it doesn't take much, unfortunately, to have catastrophic results. Any questions on that?
So when you say the community, do they call the non-emergency number? And report?
Absolutely, yes.
I appreciate clarification about hunches versus, evidence and facts. And, I think that we have to be real careful about spreading rumors. And I think, you're very right, constitutional right to privacy and protection from illegal search and seizure. With those things in mind, if people have a suspicion of a drug house, for example, unusual activity, do you have any recommendations for people that maybe live next door or across the street on the best way to collect actionable information that they can pass on to you?
Well, it's still worth reporting. And then the deputy that they speak with or detective can help guide that based on the information that they're reporting. Here's, they can probably be told, here's what we need here, can you collect this, or, do you have specifics, do you have specific date, time, et cetera. And then we can look at options in order to do that, to start an investigation.
I mean, I imagine if somebody had a real serious suspicion, video evidence that's collected from their own property at the neighbor's house would have, vehicles are stopping, going, license plate information, and everything's time, date, stamped. Would that be helpful information?
It's helpful. Sure.
Thank you.
And that private video is permissible, or is that?
It can be used in certain circumstances, yes.
I think that you have to be careful. You couldn't go, correct me if I'm wrong, we couldn't go on this, I can't go on your property.
Correct.
Right.
But I can take pictures, video from the street or from my property of, neighbor's house or cars. Correct?
Yeah, and, we would certainly caution people to do that safely and not get into a confrontation that may not have been the intended outcome and would have consequences. So, but absolutely, anytime somebody can report their concerns about a neighboring property to the sheriff's office.
I think that this really came up on Saturday as we're going through our goal setting and talking about drug houses. And it's like, how is it possible that there could be so many people in town that are 100% positive that's a drug house and it's still happening? But to your point, the reason why that may be the case is because there's not adequate evidence to justify a search.
Correct, and I'll kind of talk about more kind of globally about hunches and rumors and things like that, because that was kind of another question that was posed to me, and I can maybe cover that a little more in depth. There's another question, or did I cover that okay? Okay. So there's another question posed. I want to make sure that I read this properly. So what is the comparison of time spent in other areas of the county, Parkdale, Odell, Mount Hood, et cetera, compared to Cascade Locks outside of the additional paid time? So I can give you an idea of that, but some of it is anecdotal because we don't track time in those other communities because they don't pay for extra service. So what I can tell you is that Cascade Locks, so the Hood River County Sheriff's Office provides direct law enforcement service, direct patrol service to just over 16,000 people in this county. Cascade Locks, if you're looking at the 2023 census numbers, or the population estimate is about 1,393 people, which would be about 11.5% of the population that we provide direct services to. Looking at our calls for service are right in line with the population. We're right about 12%. And so the remaining 88% of our call volume, which is several thousand calls a year, are in the remaining areas of the county outside of the city limits of Cascade Locks. And so a lot of time is spent in those areas responding to calls, because it is, 1 out of 10 calls is in Cascade Locks, and the other 9 are going to be somewhere else in the county. And so, I think I'm going to make an assumption here, but part of that question is probably what are you getting? What is the contract? So in the state of Oregon, the sheriff is required to provide law enforcement services anywhere within in the county that they are sheriff. And essentially a city has 3 options as far as public safety and law enforcement services. They can do nothing, and then they are provided with the service that the sheriff can provide. The caveat to that is the sheriff is not mandated to provide any level of service. The sheriff provides the amount of service that they can with the resources available. The second option is that the city can choose to create a police department. So as with the city of Hood River, they chose to have a police department. That does not relieve the sheriff totally of responsibility, but it makes that city police department the primary responder, and they're primarily responsible for criminal calls and actions within the city. And then the third option is that the city can choose to enter into a contract with the county sheriff. That happens all over the state. There are examples of that in probably 3/4 or more of the counties in this state, including some very small counties, like in Gillum County. They have a contract with the city of Condon because they had a police department that they weren't able to continue a few years ago, and they contracted with the sheriff. And so what you get with that contract is you get a guarantee that you're going to get dedicated service within the city that you have that contract. So with the example of Cascade Locks, your contract is for 24 hours of dedicated service a week. And so we ensure to the best of our ability that is fulfilled. That comes before a lot of other staffing challenges, because you pay extra, because the citizens of this community want extra law enforcement services from the sheriff. That contract comes first. So to kind of give you an example, we've had several staffing challenges just in my 10.5 years or so as sheriff, where we have been short-staffed. Before the levy passed in 2020, we had to cut significantly. We lost a lot of people, but the contract for the city of Cascade Locks was prioritized, and we always fulfilled that, even when we were having those challenges. If you did not have that contract, then we would provide the service that we could with the resources available at the time. We're going into it's very cyclical in our line of work, right? And particularly right now, it's very difficult to hire people and retain people. We're going to be seeing some really significant staffing challenges. But because the city of Cascade Locks has a contract, we will continue to prioritize that and make sure that you get what you pay for. So that's another thing that a contract does for you.
Okay, on the 24 hours, can you explain those? Like, is it travel time? Is it reporting time, or how are those?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we really try to, we really enforce this with our deputies, is that it is within the city limits of Cascade Locks. So there is not, if a deputy comes down here and they are on the west end of the county and they're in Wyeth area, Herman Creek, that's not counted. It's the city limits of Cascade Locks. And we do our best to get a very accurate picture of that. And you'll see, oftentimes in the reports that we provide that it'll be like it'll be 100.6 hours or something for the month, because we're trying to really track that very closely. So that you know what you're getting, for the money. And we really make an effort to not only provide the 96 hours that you pay for, but to exceed that. And again, that time that is captured on the reports that we provide are by and large in the city limits of Cascade lots. Any other questions about that?
So we've discussed if we wanted to increase, it's something the community brings up a lot, about increasing your presence here. It would only be, are we still at, it would have to be for a full-time? I suppose you can't talk negotiation prices right now, but there is a way for, obviously, for a bigger contract to increase the number of hours if you had the staff.
So it's really hard to increase hours. So the reason, let me just kind of go back and just give you a little context. So the 24-hour that the city pays for, what that takes into account is the fact that deputies have to have training. And so you're not there, so that means they're not going to be in the city because they're either going to be off training, they're going to be locally training, but they're not providing a service to your community when that's happening. There's time that they have to spend in court. There's time that they're writing reports or at the office in Hood River. That's not part of the time. And so that's why the 24 hours from one person is more realistic. I don't believe we would be able to follow through. I know we wouldn't be able to follow through if we said it was 40 hours of service and we were only using one person to do that. It's just not possible because of all the other things. And so to kind of get back to your question, in order to add more coverage, yes, it would require another person. We would be happy to do that, but we would have to add another person.
Another 24-hour person.
Yeah, and there is a potential where we could go up to maybe 30 or something, but I think my concern is if I'm entering into an agreement, an official agreement with another government agency, I want to make sure that we can follow through and deliver.
Question about, not to speak specifically about days and times that we have somebody here, a deputy in town, but the crime that is caught and occurring, does that influence when they're showing up? Like, for example, the crime map that Marilyn just put on our website, it shows, when crime is occurring. Is that factored into deciding when and where patrols will take place?
Not really. They're on a rotating schedule. The deputies are going to change to a new schedule next week because we're losing some staff, but they were on a rotating 12-hour schedule, so the days would change. The hours are pretty consistent. Historically, the city has wanted a little more coverage in the evening hours when there aren't as many people out and about, and there tend to be more crimes that can occur. The map, if it's the map from our website, what it's showing is calls for service. It's not necessarily crime. Like, it doesn't mean the crime happened then, it means that's when those are the calls for service.
Gotcha.
And so you can dial some of that down by hours. I can tell you that our heaviest call volume is during the day. We receive the most calls, not just in the city of Cascade Locks, but by and large during the day. And then there's days that are busier. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays are slower. And we see the call volume increase as the week goes on. But it's typically during daytime hours. But that's when people wake up and they go out and they see, oh, somebody broke my window last night. That's when it gets reported. They're usually not in progress crimes, but there's more call volume.
And then I guess that answers to my next question, which was maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but on the crime center statistics report that we get, those are the times that those calls are called in, or is this when deputies are actually responding to?
So it should be when the call is called in. And some of those would be in progress, so there might be a crime in progress. And then some of those may be like a cold crime or an incident that could have happened 2 weeks ago, and they're just reporting now,
Just
which
finding out
happens.
about it.
Exactly.
So it's somewhat limited in the data, just from the way it's either reported or the way we're reporting it.
Yes, so typically if there's a crime, so there's a call for service. And so you're getting the call for service information. That's when the call comes in to our dispatch center. Then we have a list of case numbers that were taken. So those are actual criminal reports that were written on some of the incidents that were reported. Within those crime reports, typically, it'll say this is when the deputy got the report and wrote it, or about the time. And then there's another date that they can put in, like this is when it actually occurred. But that's within a crime report. That's not going to be within a call for service. And the bulk of what that report contains are the calls for service from dispatch, which are this is the calls we got, and this is when they came in.
So the crime report itself has a spot where they would actually record, the deputy would record when the crime actually took place. To the
Correct.
best of their knowledge.
If it's known,
If it's
right.
known.
Yeah,
But that's not on the map at all.
correct. Because the map uses dispatch call for service. It's through our computer aided dispatch.
Maybe this is stretching a deputy too thin, but are there other small towns in Hood River County that contract out that might be willing to share? If we wanted to add 10 hours and they added 10.
There aren't, no, the city of Cascade Locks is the only contract that, or the only city that has a contract. Because, and this is the outside of Hood River, this is the only incorporated city. Because Odell and Parkdale are just census designated places. And then there was a final question about what can we do? What can the community do? So one of the things that I've had a lot of discussions with the prior city administrator and some with your new administrator about the rumor mill in Cascade Locks, and it seems to run rampant sometimes. And I appreciate it when there's a question that just reach out, and then we can usually tamp that rumor down. There's been some rumors over the last few years that there are crime waves going on, and there X happened here and Y happened here, and we'll go in and look at our calls and it isn't reported. Or what's reported, what actually happened and was reported to us is not what is being said on the street. And so one of the things is for city government, I would certainly urge you, to talk with your administrator, and I am happy to look into anything before there's any conclusions drawn, before there is a major concern or an uproar, that we are happy to look into that and see if there's truth to it, what we can, what our response can be, if we need to take action, if we need to increase patrols, whatever it may be, we're happy to do that. But I think then, what I would say back to the council is encourage people, if they have a concern, ensure that they have reported it, ensure that they have made a report to our office, because a lot of times they haven't. And we can't do anything and take action until we get that report. So encourage people to do that. Be good witnesses, be good listeners, and if you see something, say something. We've heard that a lot, but it's true. And so if we get that report, we can certainly take action. But I just really want to reinforce that we're happy to answer questions, concerns from not only the council but the community as they arise.
Do you have some good, if you see something, say something, social media blurbs or something that we could share on our city page?
Yeah, we have pushed some of that out, and some of that's a national campaign. I don't think we've done that for a while. And I can talk with our social media folks and see if we have something.
It might be nice to come from you so that we were saying what you wanted us to
Yes,
say.
yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, I think the bottom line message is, just, if you have a concern, report it. We can put up our, non-emergency number. And of course, if there's an in-progress issue, then, you can use 911.
I was just gonna say, in the interest of, talking about dispelling rumors, I wanna express my appreciation. The sheriff's office was really helpful, in getting us, kind of the archive records from all these crime summary statistics all the way back to when we started. I think it was like 2018 or 2017 when we started that. Maryland kind of spearheaded that effort. And then we put that.
Be that gentleman behind me.
Thank you.
Undersheriff.
But it was kind of eye-opening for me to find out, one, that's not something that you have data for anybody else because you're not providing contract services for anybody else. So we're really fortunate to have this kind of data and when we're looking at the report on a month-to-month basis, it's really sometimes it's a little difficult to ascertain. Are we having a crime wave? Like we don't have any context. So part of why we wanted to get all that and compare it was so that we could see, well, March 2023, how does that compare to 2022 and 2021? And I think having factual, accurate data is a really good way to combat the rumors. And people have a subjective feeling that crime is increasing, but that might just be because they talked to two people that had something happen last month or whatever. So that was really helpful for us. And so I just want to say thank you. But it is somewhat limiting that we don't really know when the crimes are occurring. It's really when we're actually filling out the paperwork so that does somewhat obscure maybe when crime is actually taking place.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you anecdotally that I'm in my 26th year with River County in public safety, and that Cascade Locks is a much kinder, gentler place than when I started. It'd be the Wild West sometimes, and the undersheriff, I think, can attest to that. He was a deputy down here for 2 years in the 90s.
And majority of our crime is nonviolent, it's property theft, a lot of vehicle stops. But, we are very fortunate that the crime that we're having is really nonviolent crime, more property related.
Yes. Yeah, and certainly, there are going to be one-offs where things happen because of the city's proximity to the interstate, easy on, easy off, or barely easy on, easy off. But we've seen that over the years, unfortunately, and we've seen crime come out of Portland. We've seen robberies that, were armed robberies that are not related to anybody in the community because they feel that they can target it because of their proximity to the freeway and either hit the interstate bridge or go west back to Portland.
So
Go ahead.
I just brought something interesting I had. Do you guys have any state collaborative works with Skamania and Clickadat County?
Yes, so in the gorge, we have an agreement called the Mid-Columbia Law Enforcement Agreement, and it includes Clickatat, Skamania counties, and all the agencies. It goes, I think Sherman County is included in all the way over to Sherman, but I know it's Wasco and Hood River for sure, and then Clickatat, Skamania, and all the agencies within those. And so we do have mutual agreements to assist each other. And Skamania County has always, my entire career, been a phenomenal partner on the west end of the county for us, and they will respond to major incidents and oftentimes can get here quicker than us if we don't have our deputy, if the Cascade Locks deputy isn't working. But over my career, I've responded with Skamania County deputies in Cascade Locks on priority events. They're very, very good, and we try to reciprocate with them.
I had one other question. Sure. On the 24 hours deputy being here, does that count, the time count, calls to service that happen while they're here, or is it and when they're not paid to be here?
So the way that it works, the 24 hours is when they're in the city limits. Yeah. And so if they get a call, then that's during that time. And then if we get, so obviously there's going to be calls that occur when that deputy's not working. And so a deputy will respond to that call. Sometimes it's tracked as other hours. It's not going to be tracked as the primary hours, but it would be tracked as the other hours that you'll see on your report. But they may or may not have to respond in person. A lot of times people just want to make reports on the phone. And we have avenues to make reports electronically as well. And so if people do a phone report or an electronic report online, it's not tracked as anything to do with Cascade Box, except for the criminal report itself will show that occurred in Cascade Box, but not towards the hours, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sheriff English, on your call breakdown, when you serve a warrant here in town, do you list that in the call breakdown?
Yes.
It's on the, I think Marilyn, did you send that out today? Or was that, Jordan sent that out, it has the call breakdown, I think it's got, I don't remember, it's like WRNT or something on there.
There's W just once, and then there's I think another warrant code as well.
WS is warrant served.
Yeah.
Warrant survey, thank you.
Kevin? Mine's just more of a, wanted to make you aware, if you didn't already know, that, there are drug dealings that are happening under the overpass on Ruffin Street. And I tried taking pictures, but my camera doesn't let it go big enough to be able to see a license plate. And then they're not there very long, so I haven't called it in because they'll be gone by the time you get there, even if you're in town, most likely. So, is there anything else I could be doing? Because I'm not gonna go walking down the street to
It's
that.
probably a good plan. Yeah.
But they either park there and, one person gets out and goes back, into that area, or, sometimes it's the driver that actually gets out and just leaves the car there. Not to mention it being an unsafe area for someone to be parked there.
Yeah, if we could collect some more information from you, maybe offline, and we can kind of discuss the circumstances and figure out a plan of action. Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy, and Officer English. On that note, do you do trainings? Like, we do have some neighborhood watch people here, but I'm wondering if communities, I was a part of what do you call it? The neighborhood watch, I guess, training by Clackamas County Sheriff's up in Welch's. Do you do that? Do we ask for it? And then people learn what to do, maybe in different neighborhoods? We all came and.
Yeah, so this, it's a great question. This subject has come up particularly specifically in Cascade Locks before. And we've talked about our willingness to come down and speak with groups if there was something organized. I know under the prior administrator, there was some discussion and interest from the community about starting some groups. And we would certainly come down, and we would first kind of talk to, the group organizers, figure out what information they'd like to hear, come down, and we could even do just kind of tips and safety things, or do something more organized or formal. But we're certainly happy to do that and provide whatever service that we can to make sure that those organizations can get off the ground, or even if we're just educating people in the community how to be safer and what to look for and things like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Because last thing I want to talk about is speeding enforcement. One of our residents came, he's here this evening as well, after our last council meeting, that it was eye-opening when he said, between Shahala and Linsong, about a third of our community lives in that side of town. Very limited as far as bike paths, and place for pedestrians to walk. And speeding, unfortunately, has been an issue for a long time. To combat that, we put up the LED signs with the radar to inform people how fast they're traveling. It seems like it's been more effective. for controlling traffic for, passenger vehicles, but commercial trucks that are traveling on forest lanes seem to disregard those signs. Is there any way we can request an increase in, enforcement for specifically commercial vehicles on forest lane?
Yeah, we will just put it out as extra patrol for our patrol folks, and then certainly let the deputy know that it's assigned, or is covering the contract in here to be on the lookout. I think having specific times and maybe even days would be helpful. I know that we, within the last week and a half or so, took a complaint from a citizen on frontage about commercial truck traffic that is believed to be exceeding the speed limit, and one of our deputies was tracking that down and actually trying to contact the carrier and have a discussion with them. So I have heard that. I hadn't heard the forest lane complaint, but frontage, I know. I saw the call within the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think it's almost conflict with, the request to have more patrols at night, because I think more of the commercial traffic is probably happening during daytime hours.
Yeah.
So that might be just hard to sort that out, but
Well, it doesn't have to be the Cascade Locks assigned deputy either. And so if deputies that are working during that time are available and able to come down and work some street enforcement here and there, that I think that we could certainly try to arrange that. We put out extra patrol requests very regularly that are all over the county, like complaint of speeding in this neighborhood, or complaint of kids screwing around at night, or complaint of illegal activity in this park, and those types of things. And so it alerts our deputies
those are areas to watch.
that, okay, we'll spend a little more time in this area and that area. And that's one of the areas where we rely on the community for help, letting us know what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess specifically be daytime commercial traffic on forest.
Okay, yeah, we'll certainly make note of that, put that out.
Overweight, is that more ODOT?
Yeah, it's more ODOT and motor carrier enforcement.
Do you guys, are you looking to see if they've gone through the weigh scales and what they weighed in at? And are you looking at any of that when you pull them over as part of the stop?
So there's another level of training. There's commercial motor vehicle enforcement that our deputies typically don't get because there's a lot of nuances to it and a lot of specific rules. State police, the troopers will do some of that enforcement because they're typically on the interstates. And you have to have a commercial motor vehicle certification, and they have to, in order to maintain that, do truck inspections and things like that every year. And so our deputies don't have that certification.
So speeding you could help with, but
Yes.
OSP would be a better resource to reach out to about the weight enforcement.
Yeah, the weight, yeah, and motor carriers.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
That House Bill 2095 looks like it's passing, and that's the one on all municipalities will be able to put up speed radar trailers or permanent stations that can ticket. So if that passes this session, we can look into getting a speed radar trailer and start ticketing these people.
I did want to mention one comment that I really appreciate on the Facebook pages, when you guys make an arrest and you have the picture of all that you've confiscated and everything, and I just really, really appreciate that. I know it's a lot of work to go into that. It's not just a simple pull over, and so, but I really appreciate sharing you guys sharing all that information.
Somewhat scary though, isn't it?
It is scary because, you're looking at big baggies of blue pills and whatnot. It's not only scary what's out there, but I know it's just full of good comments, and I really appreciate whoever is taking those pictures and taking the time to put that on there. So I'll say thank you.
And I want to thank you. When I moved here 2.5 years ago and was told by residents of a drug manufacturing and sales home near me that what I shared was told to call non-emergency, and y'all came out a lot and took care of it, and that particular house is gone, and I appreciate that. And I had to make another call about distraught person trying to get into my home, and y'all were right there, and I And so I thank you. It was fast, even though we know that you're a little bit of a distance away. So thanks for looking after us.
Any other questions?
All right,
I think you're good.
thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, Cascade Lux Museum. Janice Green.
Hello.
Sorry, I didn't have my stuff together quick enough to get into your packets, so no handouts.
Take it.
Thank you.
That might also be last. Alright, so I got to meet with your tourism committee and it was March 27th. I was at their meeting and presented this, but last year the council also appreciated this information, so I wanted to bring it to you. So the city of Cascade Blocks contracts with the museum, I suppose is the best term. It's not like a formal contract, but we provide visitor center services for the city. And what I've been doing is collecting and analyzing the data into some meaningful stuff that we can actually take forward and know what is working for us from a tourism standpoint and how recovery is going from the pandemic. So I'm happy to report that visitor foot traffic at the Cascade Blocks Museum and Visitor Center was back to 99% of normal last year. It was like 99.8% of normal, it was so close. And for the purpose of calculating that, we did a 5-year average from 2015 to 2019 to kind of like what even is normal from before then. We've also expanded our operating season. We're now open March through October, and we are seeing this year that more people are using our local discount because we're open not during the super busy season. So people are coming out of their houses into the rain to see the museum. Last year, we also collaborated with ODOT to facilitate the free in-person waterfall corridor permits. That program is not continuing this year, but because of the success we had with the waterfall corridor permits, they are going to start offering, supposedly, I haven't heard like full confirmation of this, but there should be paper permits available for Multnomah Falls this year, which have not been available previously. It's always been on reservation.gov. And so to have the access for those paper permits is really important for both the community and for visitors who just aren't able to use recreation.gov for one reason or another. We opened one seasonal rotating exhibit last year, which was now entering the uncanny valley, which was exploring the science of why all of the dolls and mannequins in the museum are so creepy. That was pretty successful. We did that in October. We also completed our first ever strategic plan, published a book, Images of America, Cascade Blocks and Canal, became available on August 8th, and you can get that from Arcadia Publishing or in the museum gift shop, or out of the back of my car, or we also hosted the 160th birthday party for the Oregon Pony. And we've also started hosting bingo nights and trivia nights with the local breweries. So we're doing educational and fun programming in the evenings now too. The museum is open Thursdays through Mondays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Like I said, that we are seeing a lot of anecdotal feedback from people who are excited to see it open early. And we're seeing that greater percentage of visitation from locals. Admission is up to $6 for adults, $5 for seniors over the age of 60, and $3 for youth. Children 5 and under are free, and then the local admission is only $1, and students in the Hood River County School District get in for free. And we saw a lot of kids take advantage of that during spring break this year. We had these groups of high schoolers and middle schoolers that would come in with just their friends unsupervised, and they were like, we heard that we could come for free, and it's working. So super excited to see them, but I was This summer, we've opened up an exhibit on Cascade schools. So we've got one that is featuring all the way from one-room schoolhouses in the 1850s through the high school closing in 2009. We've got a lot of really cool spag and pirate stuff from the alumni that have come together to make that exhibit. We've also opened up the upstairs so you can walk all the way around it, which has made a huge difference in people's visitor experience. If you hadn't been in before, it used to be just peeks through a half door. So to get into the bedroom makes a big difference for getting to appreciate all the cool stuff that's in there. We've got a lot of events lined up for 2023. We hosted a prom in the school gym last weekend, which was a super fun success, and I got to see several of you there. We've got a book signing coming up on Monday, the 24th at Thunder Island Brewing. We're doing our local history trivia nights with Forges on May 11th, September 14th, and November 9th. The May 11th theme is going to be, Are You Smarter Than a Fourth Grader? We're going to focus on state history standards from the fourth grade curriculum from the state. So it should be pretty fun and might be something that some people actually know the answers to, unlike the really obscure stuff I've been doing. We're going to make the pony party into an annual event. So we'll be celebrating the Oregon Pony again this summer. That's an outdoor festival out on the lawn in front of the museum. We set up yard games and we get a bounce house. It's super fun. And that coincides with our membership drive. And since we will unfortunately likely not have the stern wheeler this year, we are hosting our Magical History Masquerade instead of Magical History Tour. And that'll be in the pavilion down at the Marine Park. We've also got some pretty cool collaborative projects that are going on. One of them is the Columbia Gorge Museums Pass, which is a punch card that you can buy for $99. And it gets you into 10 different museums. It gets 4 people in to 10 museums throughout the whole gorge, anytime over through the end of the year. So 4 people, one time, 10 museums, $99. And it goes all the way from Washougal to Pendleton. And I'm really proud of this project because I was the main organizer for it. And that's been a lot of fun and really successful and great to get those partnerships throughout the whole gorge with the museums. We are also participating in the statewide Oregon Heritage Plan Evaluation. So Oregon Heritage is the state parks program that oversees heritage work and heritage organizations throughout the state. And they're doing a 3-year survey project evaluating how their goals are being met by different organizations throughout the state. And we were specifically recruited to participate in this because of our size and location. So that has been, I answered a couple questions so far, so we'll see where that goes for the next 3 years. And we are also participating in the Arts and Economic Prosperity Economic Impact Survey for the Columbia River Gorge, and that's being headed up by the Columbia Gorge Tourism Alliance. And what they're doing is they're collecting economic data from visitors to cultural organizations. So they're saying, oh, how much money did you spend driving here? Did you get a hotel room? Collecting that kind of information from our visitors to see what the impact is for art-specific organizations in the gorge. And so we are also doing that, which will be really great when it comes time to write those kind of grants. To review the projects that we do for the city, like I said, the city has been budgeting financial support to the museum for visitor center services. We were able to leverage that support to create a second full-time position at the museum. Union Pacific was matching that to make that position possible. We did experience turnover, and I am actively recruiting and interviewing candidates next week. So that is hopefully gonna not be in there by myself for very much longer. Going into collection stewardship, at this time, 963 of the objects inside the museum have been cataloged into our system. We're also in the process of complying with the Native American Grave Protection and Repatriation Act, which is something that started in the 90s and is still an ongoing process at the Cascade Museum. And then in our strategic planning process, obtaining appropriate facilities was identified as the key strategic question for the museum. We are experiencing continued delays in purchasing that old hardware store building, so we are reevaluating and seeing what else we can do. Now getting into the interesting stuff with the data. So I was happy to report that we were right on track with, Travel Oregon did a lot of forecasting about how pandemic recovery was going in the tourism space. And we were right on track with that midsummer return to 2019 levels for tourism in our area. And as I mentioned before, we also facilitated that highway permit pass program, and this summer will be the location for the Multnomah Falls passes. Travel Oregon has done a lot of research into that economic impact, and one of the statistics that they like to put out there is that welcome centers generate approximately $35 in tourism expenditures for every dollar that gets put into their budget. So we're supposed to, by having visitor centers, it's making tourism better, and it's making tourists want to stay in our area longer. And we are also pleased to report an increase in repeat visitation. So we're looking at about 20% of people who come to the museum have been to the museum at some other point, which is amazing to have that kind of retention rate. And then, so this little financial chart on here is from the Americans for the Arts Economic Impact Calculator, which is not a perfect model for us, but what it does is it takes the number of visitors that you have and estimates what they're spending in the community is to make a pretty close guess as what your actual economic impact is as a small organization. So based on our expenditures and the number of visitors we have and their expenditures, we're looking at $110,000 impact for the past year on the local economy, which supports 3.3 full-time jobs and is bringing in state and local government revenue. So since the city's 2019 investment in the museum, we've doubled our economic impact, which is super great. And I appreciate your continued support. And then we have also started getting kind of granular with the data that we're tracking at the front desk. So in looking at our visitor center function, we started tracking the number of people who are just coming in to ask questions, because before, if you're bringing them up in a cash register, there was no record of like how many people showed up and said, where's the bathroom? So we saw a really big leap. We're looking at 5,000 people who came in just to ask questions or just to get information from the visitor center. And 1,909 people who attended the museum and got some sort of admission. I broke that out into the graph to separate people who only wanted ODOT waterfall passes from the rest of visitors asking questions, because that was a really specific segment last summer. So 3,900 people just had a question and just wanted to show up and talk to a person and get directions or ask, you know, what hikes are open or where do I get to the bus stop or any number of things that visitors come in and ask. We get some really wild questions and we get a lot of really normal questions. Breaking that out into the questions categories, we get a lot of people who are wondering where the locks are, which we answer a lot of history questions just based on the nature of our business. But then our second biggest category is on other outdoor recreation. People are looking for, where's the bike path? What do I do at this park? Can I have a picnic here? Can I go for a hike? Whatever, like, where do I launch my sailboat? Where can I put in my kayak? We're getting those kind of questions as well. And it's really exciting. It's never boring to sit at the front desk of the museum. Someone's always going to come in and say, and have something to say. So I kept that kind of brief just in respect for your time this evening, but does anyone have any questions about what's going on down there? Or?
Janice, is there a sign-in thing that they do so that you can track which people are from out of state, which ones are local?
We missed that information last year, but we have got it back for this year, so.
Okay, because I noticed when you go over to the Stevenson Farmers Market, they have these colored popsicle sticks.
Oh.
And yeah, so you put your name on, and then you put it in the different bowls, if it's Stevenson or out of state or what have you, so. Very good, I'm glad you're tracking it.
Yeah, that was an important thing that we missed last year, but it's back.
So the city investment, does that usually come from TLT funds?
Yes.
Yes. And then it sounds like you were certainly looking at one building on Main Street. I personally think it'd be great if you're up on Main Street, but I'm gonna pop it. Are there other buildings or locations or?
We are actively recruiting board members who want to participate in our capital campaign process. So I don't have those answers right now because we just finished the plan and have not taken the next step of actually activating and doing that work to evaluate. It is the next step, is to.
And do you, so you're working on the plan, but is there, in your own mind and research you've done, is there a particular location that would be best for you?
I mean, I would love to be on Wanapa somewhere, and I like that building because it already exists, but I am also open to new development or whatever is going to be best for the community. And we'll bring in stakeholders from around the community to have those questions answered and make sure we're doing what's best.
I'm so glad you're not gonna be there alone, because I'm worried about that. But also, when you're not alone, are you at all in touch with the Main Street organization about funding? We joined that as a city, and does that help you? It's part of the Oregon Park and Rec.
Yeah, so Main Street is related to Oregon Heritage, and we really fall under Oregon Heritage since we're not on Main Street and we're not really a like city development organization.
I did talk to one person there who said they can help get money for buildings. Okay, so you know that.
Oh, yes, I know that. Thank you.
And I was just curious, the fiscal year starts July 1 for you?
We are on a calendar year.
So you're on a calendar year. So your year-to-date expenses for,
So, I calculated that report on a fiscal year for the purpose of giving it to the city and to the port. So that is the fiscal year for that.
so I guess,
That information starts on July 1.
okay, cool, thank you. I was just, I was like, it seems like a lot of money we spent so far, just a couple of months, but it's because we're almost the end of that
Yes.
time period. I understand. Thank you.
Any other? Jeremiah.
I just wanted to quickly point out, as one of the larger stakeholders with the museum, that I think Janice and the work that she does and the work the museum does, especially with the increase in what you were bringing to the downtown business, did you say $110,000 is what you represented? The work that,
Yes.
yeah, go ahead. Is that right? Did I have that right?
You did?
I think that highlights the work that can be accomplished when the port and the city work together. Janice is a shining example of that. The museum is a shining example of that. And I think it's something that we all can be proud of. Not too many things in Cascade Locks that are working quite as well as the museum right now. So Janice, thank you for your hard work.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
And I want to ditto that. I've been to the raffle nights and the trivia nights, and I spent 2 hours looking up vaudeville history just so I could win. And been down to the museum and Janice and bought your book. It's because of you and what you're doing that got me excited about the museum and bringing in somebody.
The prom was amazing. Everything she touches seems to somehow turn out amazing. So we certainly
thank you for your
are certainly happy with our investment here at the port.
Thank you.
Very much.
First floor of the new city hall, right?
We can certainly put that into the discussion with the plans.
Would you be happy over there by the fire department? Is that too far out of town?
I don't know anything about this plan.
We're dreaming, we're dreaming.
We're dreaming. Certainly happy to discuss that more.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
very much. All right, columbarium.
Okay, so after this was presented to the council, back on February 27th, we were approached by the two citizens that kind of spearheaded this discussion. And because myself and most of the council were kind of in the dark on how we got to that point, we didn't know the background. They had some concerns on that location under the trees that was selected mainly because of the view. You can't see from the road, it's hidden, people don't want to be crowded against the trees. So let me, I have a couple pictures here really quick. So there, myself, Sheldon, Joanne, and Randy Holstrom met last Friday and discussed this. And there, oh, that was really tiny. Oh, man. Anyway, so that's from the parking lot. That mound of dirt is where it would be going. You can't see it from the parking lot. And this one.
It's like, your flip phone, like 2002?
Yeah, one thing did a small one, this is from the cemetery itself. Their concern is it's not an attractive location to sell lots. Which I don't know if I agree with, but they're the experts, so I'm gonna go with them. They are fine with that location as long as we remove the trees. Their thought was if we leave it there and don't remove the trees, we might as well just return the thing and not even put it in.
Is that the only other location that they would be okay with?
They would prefer in the middle of the cemetery, like they mentioned, we, by the flagpole. Myself and Sheldon brought up our concerns and they agreed with them, you know, we have to pick up and move probably 15 headstones, which is a giant liability for us. And it's about 24,000 pounds rolling across that grass that as I walked, I mean, granted it's raining, I walked across on a foot. So it was not great. They are fine with that as long as council was comfortable with removing those trees and that bush right there, so it'd be nice and open view. Which, to be honest, Public Works is perfectly fine. It's save them from cleaning up. There's too many trees there. They're not healthy anyways. When they planted them, I'm sure they were a lot smaller. They're now growing into each other and it's not good. So all four of us recommended clearing out those trees, which would take probably about 3 days of work. And that's assuming there's a couple other small things that they would have to get a hold of.
Are you talking about removing all of them or?
All the trees.
All
We would leave the,
Yeah, we leave a couple.
leave these little guys, the little rhoda something or other.
Rhododendrons.
Rhododendrons, yeah.
And what is beyond those trees?
Like right here, that's parking lot.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, so this is the southern front of the cemetery.
But you wouldn't keep like a couple of the larger ones?
Our thought was to get rid of all
I would be more in favor of getting rid of all those small ones and give space for the larger ones.
of them. We could
Leave
do
the
that too.
healthy ones.
Yeah, we could do that, yeah.
Weed out the.
Nope. I think if we did get rid of them though, bring it back up, is to at least get, dang it, wrong picture. That one. And now it's not gonna load. Here we go. Get rid of all of these directly in front of it. So you can see it very easily from the road or the park.
Well,
Sorry, I didn't realize there'd be such a small image.
yeah.
Do we have the large picture of the cemetery
From the old,
available?
from
That
the
you showed
old,
us before?
Not on me right now.
Okay.
Jordan, I was there this weekend and I noticed that there was a headstone that was really, really close to where that mountain dirt area is. So there's no plots that would have to be moved in that spot.
Nope. No, they already have it framed out, ready to go. They're ready to pour the slab.
What about people being able to access it without stepping on somebody's headstone?
Should be fine. I'd have to double check, but it'd be a lot better than in the middle where it was. I mean, that thing's crowded in by the
Yeah,
flagpole.
but just out of respect, I don't want people standing on someone's headstone.
Yeah, it's important to me that we not disturb the graves that are there in the headstones. It's important that we make sure there is a path, and maybe that's a part of our plan, a designated path that does not go across any
Yeah.
graves or headstones, and,
There we go.
Hey,
That's
so yeah, you
pixelated.
can see that there
Okay.
are some that are
There's
pretty close.
Couple, but I mean, you're probably a
that's
good
not too much.
3-4 feet right here. 5-6 feet right here.
to remove as few trees as possible because it's a part of Cascade Locks and it makes that sound very beautiful.
And maybe why those people chose those spots too, when
Right.
they requested a plot.
And are they making the base higher? There was something
Yes,
I
we're
read.
gonna make the base higher.
They're gonna make the base higher. And is Randy and Joanne, they're good with that spot?
Yeah, as long as the trees are removed.
I appreciate you
But
meeting.
Can we clarify though, as long as the trees are removed? When you said that before, I thought you were referring to these trees in this picture right by where this is going in. Was that the requirement, or did they want to see all of those trees along the parking lot removed?
I think for Randy and Joanne, as long as these directly in front of the columbarium are removed.
Got it,
Sheldon and Public Works would like to see all of them.
I see.
More of a maintenance thing for that.
Maybe we could get.
Is it
some-
because they're cedars or that are gonna get huge?
Mhm.
I mean, maybe perhaps you could get some input from an arborist that's taken out these trees about spacing and.
Yeah, oh yeah, we
Yeah.
can definitely do that.
I think that might be helpful.
And sometimes when you take out trees, then you weaken the other trees.
Yeah.
So that's why it's good for arborists, so, yeah, and I'm glad that Jordan met with them, because I know, none of us were here when this first was, well, Tammy, you might have been, but when they were talking about the columbarium, so I wanted to be respectful of what their vision was at the time and whatnot, so I'm really glad that you met with them. Yeah.
If you removed trees directly behind it, could you back it up closer to the parking lot, so it's more under the cover of the trees? Or is that not okay as well?
We could, I don't think they'd like that, I mean, so the niches themselves would be on the north and south side. The east and west sides, you could put nameplates on in memory of, so like Joanne herself would like to have her ashes put in the river. And then a nameplate on there, so her relatives can at least go to some. If it's hidden in the trees, it's not visible, you can't see it.
If we removed a few, just the trees in front of the dirt mound, and then there's possibility for a reflecting bench eventually, or?
Yeah, we could do something, yeah. Or more hardscape.
Bushes.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little uncomfortable saying, yeah, just cut down all the trees. I guess I'd like to make sure, I think taking the trees in the immediate vicinity of where this is getting installed makes sense, and getting some input on if there's overcrowding and other trees that would be wise to remove.
What is that bush, the big bush that they're concerned about? Do you know what kind of? Is that a
This
rhododendron?
thing?
Yeah.
I have no idea. But it's big and it's a pain to maintain, I know that.
It's pretty though.
It is, we have a lot of beautiful landscape.
We removed it, we replaced it with a flowering bush.
It might be.
Short one,
Short one.
short one.
It might be a flowering bush.
I know that one's.
Yeah.
When were those pictures taken, Jordan?
Today.
Today, okay. I know my roadies are blooming right now, so.
Thank you.
Brenda's got her hand up.
Brenda's got her hand up.
I have a comment. I spent about a year and a half trying to get trees that were diseased and dead that are on the back end of the cemetery. There was 2 or 3 that we finally got removed. Is there any way you guys can look at all the trees in the cemetery, and maybe if you're gonna cut good trees, maybe at least get the ones that are dead that are a hazard back here?
We're gonna
We
have an
still
ar-
have a few.
We're gonna have an arborist there, we might as well.
Yeah, because it was like a year before we could even get them to take care of some of the trees.
Good idea.
I'd like to see if this arborist would recommend saving any of those that are right there, like 1 or 2 of them.
Because it has a little bit of shade.
Yeah. None of the deciduous trees, I'd get rid of those.
There's 1 or 2 trees, it's not gonna block the view entirely.
Right.
But it still might give some shade.
It's important in this day and age of global climate change and the beauty of Cascade Locks that we don't just take down trees for the sake of making room.
Okay,
I got, plan of action.
all right.
All right, first on the list, community vision plan, we met March 28th, had a really good discussion. Kind of the consensus of the group is to slow down the process a bit. Instead of having a workshop, a community-wide workshop tomorrow, have a second strategic or steering committee meeting. Invite more people to participate on the steering committee as well as do stakeholder meetings. We get a larger bill, or will be getting a larger bill for that. Our costs will go up from about 12,000 to 18,000. But if we probably would have done the same thing, no matter what company we picked, then the bill was. So, any questions on that?
Yeah, I have some questions on the steering committee, especially since there was a lot of complaints on social media and stuff. The only person we actually approved for this committee was Sean. And
And the mayor.
the mayor, okay. Well, she automatically has it, so, and she does the picking. But 10.1A, citizens interested in serving on a city committee shall submit an application to the mayor for his or her consideration. The mayor is responsible for appointing members to said committees, and all appointments are subject to council approval. We haven't approved any of these people.
Are they, so can you say that again, the very first sentence? See, consider
Citizens interested in serving on a city committee.
So is this a city committee?
Yes, it's considered a temporary committee. All right. And shall submit an application to the mayor for his or her consideration. The mayor is responsible for appointing members to said committees, and all appointments are subject to council approval. And besides Sean and the mayor, none of these other people were approved by council.
What was the extent of the conversation we had? I know we discussed the stakeholders and said we would like a member of the port, a member of the planning commission, a member of the tourism. I took that as the appointment process, but you wanted to see individuals for those appointments?
Yeah, there has to be an application process, and then those people have to be brought, those applications have to be brought forward to us. That's the process.
Does there have to be an application if the mayor appoints them?
Yep, it still says, it says in here, an application has to be in there.
That seems counterintuitive to a mayor appointing a person, because if you're appointed, then you are on it subject to approval. I don't know why you need an application subject to approval.
It says shall submit an application, which means you have to submit an application.
So what are you suggesting we do at this point?
Well, obviously, the meetings, basically, if anybody wanted to challenge them, are worthless because they haven't been approved.
Is somebody taking minutes at that meeting? Is it, I never considered it a city committee. I considered it a committee of the University of the planning.
Steering committee for this specific.
Yeah, if
It's a
we're not,
temporary committee.
I guess,
But
but
we're
why do you say that? Is what is it, can you tell me the definition of a temporary committee?
Yeah, it's in there. It's there.
I guess my other question is, who do you want on it?
Okay, temporary committees are created by the mayor. When creating a temporary committee, the mayor shall write a statement of purpose for detailing the tasks of the committee. Establish a timeline for the duration of the committee. Generally, temporary committees should remain in service for 1 year, but depending on the circumstances and at the mayor's discretion, there may be variations in the duration of the committee. To determine whether the committee shall consist of 5 or 7 members. Of course, this committee is a lot larger, but it's still 10.1A. The approval, that's the problem.
So if my memory serves me correctly, I had presented with the mayor kind of a breakdown of who we thought would be a good members on the committee. And it was essentially a consensus agreement that basic list was fine, and that myself and the mayor had the final say on who should be on the committee. I could be wrong.
I remember, and I don't know if it's in our minutes, that we said that because it was coming up so fast that the mayor and Jordan should appoint And in my mind, I felt that this was a committee created by the planning organization, the university planning organization, not the city, that they were wanting to create a committee, not the city creating a committee. This organization is creating a committee, and we want to have input. They want to say, who do you want? So that's why I don't think it falls under the guidelines of our city committee guidelines. This is a committee of the University of Oregon Planning Department, is what I believed.
Who's paying the bills?
I guess, what do you want out of this? What action do you want?
What action do I want?
Yes, please.
I would like to review the members on that committee.
So who do you have questions about?
No, I don't have the list in front of me. There was a couple of them on there.
Like who?
Well, when it first came up, it had Brad Lorraine's name on there. And the port had not,
And he did not attend because he had not been approved by the board.
yeah.
I had that conversation with him.
And, well, I wasn't there, so that was one. Also, I heard from the tourism committee that some of them were upset because they were not consulted with who they wanted to represent them. So, their Pam Tweed is one. Why would she pick?
You know, I
Because-
think to get to the point, I think we could go, or, I mean, there's gonna be somebody that's not gonna be happy that they're on it or off of it or whatnot. Jordan and I made the best decisions we could at that time. We did on the steering committee, Caroline had voiced some concerns why she wasn't on it. After discussing that with her, we said absolutely be on the steering committee. So we've got her on the steering committee. And then Gorges is on there as well, representing another business. And so we
Gorgeous is on there? I didn't see Travis's name on there.
he's now on there.
Huh?
He got
He's
added
now,
after
he
the
got
first-
added on there.
Okay.
So that was part of the challenge.
Yeah, it was determined we didn't have enough local business on there,
Okay.
so we added a couple business owners.
Right.
Representation was a big topic in the conversation, though, Bush, and you're absolutely right. And I think that there's this, you know, on one hand, we're trying to do this as quickly as possible because we're trying to get results so that we have those to take into consideration for budget. But on the other hand, by trying to move too quickly, then we weren't getting the word out to enough people, so there's underrepresented groups that were not being a part of the discussion.
And by not following the council procedures.
I think that's
Move too
debatable, because the way I read that, it's a committee that's created by the mayor, and this wasn't a committee that's created by the mayor. This is a steering committee that was created
But
through
the mayor is responsible for appointing committees, right?
But I guess,
Is it-
you know, so do we wanna, like, how long does it take to fill, you know, how many vacancies do we have on council? You know, like, we could belabor this process for 9 months just to find the people to sit on the steering committee by counting applications. You know, like, we're trying to get this, you know, we're trying to get through this process. You know, what is our goal?
And the thing is that every single citizen has the opportunity to have input, every single one.
So the other,
Whether you're on the steering committee, whether you're on the stakeholder, everyone is gonna have the opportunity to voice their opinion.
And again, I think as the University of Oregon Policy and Planning Department created this group, this committee, not for their purposes, not for the city, it would be as if John Logan created a city and the fire department wanted people to input. It wouldn't be I said council committee, it would be for an organization under the city, whether it's a museum or the fire department or the University of Oregon Policy and Planning. I always looked at it as we hired them to do their job, and they're creating strategic planning people they call, they're creating committee, and we decided that evening, well, who do we want to head that way? And we said that Mayor Fallon and City Administrator Benedict.
Now,
I think,
question too.
I think for the interest of time, we're 9:45, we could probably go on this subject for quite a while. And
This is kind of important though, because what Butch is saying is that the next steering committee, which is tomorrow, is also invalid and can't do anything without following this process if it's applicable. And my question to Butch is, if no city government was on this council, would it still be a city council, a city steering committee? If no city government was on the committee, would it still be?
It was basically appointed by the mayor, so it's a city committee.
I guess my question is, I stand with Mr. Bennett in his conversation that we went over the list and we had a discussion of the list. We voted to approve that list. We voted to authorize Mr. Bennett and Ms. Fallon to add people. Why are we coming to this conversation over a month after that conversation that we had?
It was, well, there was no vote on it. That's one.
Okay, so then
There was
answer the
no
second
vote.
half. Why are we waiting a month to have this conversation?
Some community members have spoken up on Facebook that they did not know about it and that they would have liked to have volunteered, but they didn't have word of it.
So are they aware of it now? Because I mean, it's been publicized that the meeting is tomorrow and inclusion is an important part of this process. And please come and speak. You don't have to be on the steering committee to come to the meeting.
right, everyone, you can come
Well, I
to it.
agree, and it was actually posted on Facebook too, that it was, if you're interested, I saw it myself,
Yeah.
so
Come to the
I know
meeting.
that, but you know, there's always gonna be people who didn't see it,
Right,
so.
right, you can't please everybody, you just can't. And Jordan and I were on a timeline and we did it to speak to Councilman Miller's concerns, what we can do moving forward on any other, if we go into this again, we can do the vote. So
Should we get everybody on the council to basically say, should we go through the names and vote on them right now? And saying that their application was them sitting on the committee last time? Because they were appointed, their application was them showing up and being at the last steering committee. Does it have to be a written application or is it just an application?
It doesn't say what type of application.
So Councilman Miller, are you looking for a vote on the people who are present on the steering committee?
Well, I'm looking for you to follow the rules.
No, but right now, what are you looking for? What do you need? What is
Mr. Miller, we
your
have
question?
15 minutes left before we have to adjourn.
Well,
What do you want?
you need to vote on these people. That's what the procedure says.
So can I make a motion that we approve the list of people as a holistic list in the essence of time?
Would you like the list read?
Yes, please.
So in attendance at the meeting last week, Tara Langley from ODOT. Sarah Crompton was not on the committee, was just a citizen. So committee members, Tara Langley, ODOT, Bernard Singer, Budget Committee, myself, Pam Tweet from the Tourism Committee, Hallie Ballou, local real estate agent Pete Cappy, who was in place for Mayor Fallon. Adrian Acosta, the local school principal, John Logan, the fire chief, Jeremiah Blue, interim GM for the port, Sean Compton, council member Todd Bouchard, planning commission, Caroline Lips, Thunder Island Brewing. Also, we're adding Travis Prince, is that pronounced last name, from Gorgeous Beer? Priest? Okay,
Is Hallie still on it? Hallie Ballou?
yes.
So that's the list.
The motion is that list.
No, I'm asking, does that satisfy?
So I have objections to a couple of those people.
Well, if,
One is Pamela Tweet, because the tourism committee did not get the vote on her, which they should have.
Makes sense.
And I also object to, or I have concerns about Caroline Lips because her husband is also on the planning commission.
How is that a conflict of interest?
I don't,
She is probably the most prominent business member in this community. Her and Dave.
well, I think there's a conflict there with him being on planning commission and her being on this steering committee.
So you would have a conflict if my wife was on it as the president of the PTO?
And what about Todd Bouchard, who's also on the thing?
Yeah, well, we could go to the Todd Bouchard. The planning commission was also not advised of this. He was just appointed.
But they haven't spoken up.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the tourism committee you thought should vote on it.
I'm,
So, point of order, Mayor Fallon, I move that we make a motion and second it, have further discussion, and then see where it goes. Is that,
We can do that because we are, in interest of time, we are gonna be done by 10. So,
That's in the council.
do you
rules.
make your motion?
I'd like
With
to
the
add
friendly
a
amendment?
position for a port commissioner, but one is not present on the steering committee.
My understanding was that Mr. Lorang had to wait to officially be approved from the port commission, which occurred on Thursday, and so he could attend this one.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
well, yeah, it just wasn't listed in the names, I just called
Yes.
off, so I wanted to make sure.
Adding
I had
that
it
right. So can we have the friendly amendment of those names to your motion?
My question was, does that motion satisfy Mr. Miller's needs?
I second that
and
motion.
I gave you my objection.
No, I appreciate it.
can you restate it? The
I
motion.
motion to approve all in attendance along with the port commission member as members of the city committee.
And Travis Priest.
And
Travis
Travis.
Priest.
And Travis Priest.
I second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote.
Hold on.
Or, wait, discussion.
Jeremiah's got his hand up.
Jeremiah?
I'm so sorry, you guys. My commission has elected not to have anyone on the steering committee from the port. Their current opinion is that because we are doing a strategic business plan and that you guys are also doing a strategic business plan, that could be somewhat confusing for community members who don't necessarily understand the roles of a city versus the roles of a port. And so although I will be in attendance, I have not been appointed to sit on the committee by my commission. And if I have any sort of commissioners that are in attendance, they also have not been appointed by my commission to sit. So I apologize to make this more confusing, but currently we will not be participating in the steering committee.
So we'll remove those two names.
So,
Friendly amendment.
okay, any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Compton,
Aye.
Emmeline Baker.
Aye.
Farrell?
no.
Happy?
Aye.
Keller?
Aye.
Miller?
No,
Mayor Fallon? Aye. It passes. Okay, so, mayor and city council comments.
Oh, do we get to the rest of the?
Oh, wait, oh, I'm sorry. I like, look at the clock. All right, go ahead.
I have reached out for quotes for electrical rate studies. I've heard back from 2 of the 3 companies. I will continue to pester them. After the discussion with Mayor Fallon and Council Happy, reached out to LOC and CIS about evaluation processes. I've gotten some good feedback, reviewing those materials. Essentially boils down to don't wait till once a year to do it, talk to them all year. Audit services, Marina and Company has decided to discontinue audit services with us. They were planning to get out of the audit business anyways, and because we were delayed in starting our audit, they have decided to disengage services. So we begin looking for a new audit company as well. Crime stats were broken down. I took a stab at it, wasn't sure if this is exactly what we're looking for, comparing year over year, and then kind of just that property crime information. So again, you can email me or talk to me after the meeting, if that's what you're looking for. Travel and Hood River on Friday, the Mid-Columbia city managers met, it was myself, Hood River, Stevenson, White Salmon, and think that was it. Oh, the Dallas, and the Dallas. So it's a good lunch. They're planning on doing something about once a quarter. One thing I get out of all these meetings is we're not alone. Every city has the same problems we do, so we're not alone. LOC Spring Conference in 2 weeks, the 25th and 26th. And then I'll be out of office on the 17th. A couple quick items not on there to answer Tammy's question. Tier 2 prices comes down to market. They're predicting that's what the market's going to be, is kicking everything up to about over $60 per megawatt for tier 2. So that's why it's increased. Our finances, our contact for now, CFO, got pulled away to other clients and has not actually spent, so they haven't spent the last 2 weeks doing our account with no results. They've only actually spent probably about 10 hours. Former finance director, Bump, has answered a few questions for our consultant and has been helping. So he's hopefully back on the case full-time this week, and we'll get some stuff within the next couple of days. That's his plan.
Clarification, we have to have the finances in order to do the audit.
Correct, yes. Yeah, and I mentioned it Saturday, meeting with Jeremiah and the port to look at funding options to get the most bang out of our buck for the electrical system update. That's all I got.
Question for you,
Yes.
Amy. So just to clarify, the dates you have on here, July through February, that was getting us caught up because those hadn't been looked at from the council, which is the 6th.
Correct, I got us caught up, yep, from all those ones. I could not find one for July of 22.
That was gonna
I
ask.
could not find one.
So maybe can we get that from the sheriff's department?
Yeah, sure.
That would be helpful, just so we have that for historical.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is, if you want to go back more years, now that I have that breakdown for the codes, actually know what the codes are, and I can give more better detail. I'm
And then-
assuming, like you talked about, theft, property crime is more of the focus, not so much violent crimes.
Yep. And then I guess you hadn't entered the March numbers yet.
No, I actually didn't even know what it was here. So
Got
I
it.
went to the packet.
Okay.
Oh, we got it.
So next meeting, well.
Yes, there'll be a next meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Mayor and city council comments. Sean.
Thank you for everybody for voicing all their opinions. And I think we got through a lot of work today. In just time. Thank everybody and staff for being here till very, very late.
Councilman Miller.
I'd like to thank everybody for your cards of condolence for my brother David. He always listed Cascade Locks as his home of record. And even as he spent 32 years living in Germany. I will be going to his service. I'll be either into May or start of June. I'll be in Alabama, and I will be bringing him home. So I'd like to thank staff for all your hard work. Nah, that's it.
We did a lot of talking last time about this building, and so I reached out and did some research, and this building was started in 1925 and completed in 1926. And usually the historical time frame is 50 years or more. So I reached out, and it was suggested to me that we contact the SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Officer, who is appointed officially in each of the 59 states, territories, and the District of Columbia, who's responsible for helping to save the places that matter. And with council's approval, I'll be glad to research that more, and so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Take stuff off your plate. We're trying.
I don't have a personal connection as an office. I don't want to save this building, so go for it.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you. Councilman Keller.
I wanted to thank MCCAC for coming and visiting, Janice, for discussing the museum, Hood River County Sheriff, Matt English, and his under sheriff, Mr. Rocket. Reminder to attend the fundraiser for the PTO on Saturday from 7 until 10. Tickets are needed to be purchased sooner rather than later. And then I always appreciate the community getting involved.
Councilman.
Again, everybody coming to present tonight. It was, I want to belabor this any longer than it has been, but yeah, great having all the participation we did have. Saturday, we had a really good conversation about our goal setting, and I spoke with City Administrator Bennett earlier today about, how we could, I felt like the Word document is a little limiting in the way that the goals are written, and suggested that maybe we move that to an Excel file, because I think that it would be better to have that sorted by priority first, then by due date, and then by department, or by department and due date, so that way we can see it a little bit more clearly organized. And I also recommend that if we have to go through with all of us in one room and discussing each goal and prioritization, we're gonna be here for, I don't even know how long. So what I recommended was that we could get an Excel spreadsheet distributed to all of us individually. We could each rank them as we see them being important, and then we could code that and find the average and see how that kind of lays out, was my recommendation. But I didn't want to have that conversation without looping all of you guys in.
I agree.
Okay.
In the interest of time, have to work more efficiently.
I agree.
That's my meeting. So anyways, that's all I got.
Right.
And I just want to say thank you again for everybody who's here, all the people, even with our discussion and differences, love that we came to vote. And I want to ask City Administrator Bennett to please follow up with the owner of the Bridge of Gods Hotel to see if there's any code enforcement discussion that needs to occur. And I wanted to remind my colleagues and I that I get a lot of great advice from a lot of people in the community, and I'm having the discussion asking for sources of information, because I'm finding a lot of new things at the state level, federal level, TLT funds might have been different than the person giving me advice has been sharing. And so respectfully asking for sources, and obviously respectfully, whatever we get sharing, and I appreciate your following up with historical. I have some things I want to follow up on as well, because we're trying to not overburden Jordan. Thank you all.
All right. First of all, thank you, City. You guys just are amazing. Thank you for on Saturday all the time. Thank you to council, all of us who came on Saturday. We got a lot done in a relatively short period of time. Thank you to Sheriff English and the deputy that was here as well. To Kat, Kelly, and Kenny, and I forgot the other gal's name. But thank you to them. The Easter egg hunt, for a last minute everyone just came together. It just came together. The port, the city, the PTO, there were citizens that came in, and I'm like, here, you want to hide eggs? And they're like, great. And everyone just did wonderful. I just can't say enough. And Jeremiah, the port, you guys blew all the goose poop off of that big, huge area. We were just, the kids were happy. I just can't say enough good things about that. And thank you to Janice. You're doing an amazing job. And I love your reports, love you, and you're just doing great. And let me see, and then the PTO, the casino night, and then I'm really glad to see Thunder Island and Gorges on the committee, and that will be tomorrow night. So that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Crumpton,
Aye.
Emerald Baker,
Aye.
Farrell,
Aye.
Pepe,
Aye.
Keller,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mayor Fallon.
Aye. We're adjourned. All right. Thank you.
Did she get that to the conference and send out her review?
But then again, Mike.